I will go ahead and call the February 9th Finance Committee meeting to order at 6:02. First order of business is the review and approval of the February 9th, 2026 Finance Committee meeting. Without objection, I will move approval, I guess. So without objection, they're approved. Great. Moving on to the next item is a communication from Council President Keppel and myself about the Lakewood Host Community Cannabis Fund. We talked about it a little bit at the full council meeting, I believe, a couple weeks ago, where the city of Lakewood has received, finally, after a little bit of a delay, the revenue associated with the Host Community Cannabis Fund through the state of Ohio. We expect to receive revenue on an ongoing basis due to the sale of adult use cannabis in the city of Lakewood in our 2 current locations. And so we sought to enact, basically to put those funds aside into a fund that can be created under our codified ordinances. So this ordinance before us is to establish the fund and set out the purpose of the fund. I believe in some of my conversations with Director Mahoney, there will need to be further appropriation ordinance that will allocate those funds, which is separate from the establishment of the fund. Would you walk us through that, Director Mahoney, kind of the difference between those things and what is necessary to follow?
Sure. So this ordinance would just create the fund and, like Councilman Baker said, the anticipated uses of the money, but it doesn't establish the ability to actually spend the money. So we would have to do an amended appropriation ordinance, which I said once this passes, I can gladly get that going. So.
And Director Mahoney, and we talked about this before, but I'd like to just confirm on the record for the committee is that as far as the way this ordinance is drafted and the establishment of the fund, you think it's appropriate?
It is, but I will have to send it down to Columbus for them to authorize it. They always have to have their stamp on it. So
does that process-wise, does that typically happen after the ordinance that creates
after it's passed? Yes.
Okay, right. Thank you.
Doesn't really make sense because it's passed.
Sometimes state government doesn't make sense.
I don't see a problem with it though.
Great, thank you. And the other thing is you know, we in the draft ordinance, there's the authorized expenditures are highlighted. So was, you know, our best guess as the kind of how to bucket those funds. Now, as with anything else, we can transfer funds between funds, you know, through a higher level, but this kind of essentially parks it there until it's appropriated through an operating or capital budget. So it kind of segregates the funds as opposed to the general fund, whereas the larger bucket that we spend funds from as a city. So is there any discussion amongst the committee members about the authorized expenditures? Councilperson Striebeck.
Thank you. First of all, thank you to both you and Council President Keppel for this work. This is fantastic. And Director Mahoney, thank you for weighing in on the appropriateness of this. I would like to see health added to the safety here. I'd like it to say to use only for the expense of public health and safety related issues within the city of Lakewood, including complete streets, comma, 88 transition plan implementations, comma, and the Lakewood Community Health Needs Assessment. Because I do think, and then going on and other capital improvements related to accessibility, equity, and wellness. I think that to put safety in there without putting health, I think we miss some opportunities there, especially when we're looking at funding from a drug and possibly some mental health needs for a community that may not be covered under safety.
It's a really good point. Any other comments from members of the committee?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I could just add to that, I think that's a great point, and that's actually why I have Director Barry here as well. Due to the recent cuts at the county, that is impacting our human services budget. We are okay for this year, but in future years, assuming those cuts continue, we may not. So I would advocate for human services in general. And then Director Barry's here if you have any specific questions related to how those cuts are affecting the city.
Thank you. Now, I guess that's a question I have about fund establishment, is that right now, it seems to be limited to capital. But you can have funds that are, that can be used for capital or operating, right, just a purpose?
That's correct. Yeah, you can spend capital funds out of any fund.
As long as it meets the purpose of the fund?
That's correct, yeah.
So then I think in order to, I think right now it's, as drafted, it seems to be limited to capital. And that's where we may be able to broaden it. So I think that what I'm hearing is there is some interplay in how we would like to potentially change authorize expenditures. But since we have Director Barry here, could you share with us some of the challenges that you're having this year and as you kind of try to look through the foggy horizon as to what you see coming forward?
Sure, thank you. Unfortunately, we found out very recently, along with many other providers, that our community-based services contract, which covers our Division of Youth and is our pot of funds that pays for all of our personnel that helps families in Lakewood and in surrounding communities, has been cut, and they are looking at a 24.4% cut across the board. It's very similar to what they've proposed for the Adams Board and any of their programming and other county programming. And our contract for this year is going to suffer to the tune of $158,000 off the top. And we've already been running very narrow margins because that's what we always do. Luckily, there was a few positions that we had proposed that we didn't end up hiring for, so we've made a couple cuts that didn't affect current personnel or actual service provision, but we have lost some funding that is going to make it more difficult for us to provide emergency assistance to families in Lakewood. And I was pulling numbers before this just to kind of give you an idea. And over the last 2.5 years, we've worked with 227 different unique families just in Lakewood alone, and over close to 1,000 different families in our surrounding communities, including Lakewood, just in that time frame. And we're just seeing across the board almost a 200% increase in the referrals that are coming in from years prior. So the need has increased absolutely dramatically, and now our funding is being cut. So it's going to be very difficult to meet the needs of the families, and we're doing a lot of great good in the community. And I've located some funding that's going to get us through this year and potentially part of next year, where we're not going to have major suffering or anything like that in the department, but it would be helpful for us to have some stability, and I could see these funds providing a little bit of that to us so we can continue to meet the needs of the community, which just seem to be growing year after year.
Thank you. Well, I mean, from my standpoint, I think, that's certainly worthy, of these funds. And that's interesting. So you said it was 200 families, and then, so we serve a lot of families from out of Lakewood as well?
We do. This program actually serves most of the western suburbs, including 2 Cleveland zip codes, 111 and 135. Although primarily these days we are serving, the vast majority of referrals are coming from Lakewood and kind of the West Park area. And we've always believed that strengthening our neighbors strengthens us, and, making sure that families are stable ultimately stabilizes the families here in Lakewood. But we're really seeing an increase in referrals in Lakewood itself. I mean, like I said, that's actually up like 195%. So, you know, we're seeing upwards of 15 or 20 referrals just for Lakewood alone. We have a very good partnership with the schools, but those are also DCFS-derived like referrals, so they're coming straight from the county as well. So the need is just climbing. They are also struggling to maintain staffing with their social workers. Their training has suffered. They have hundreds of open positions at this point with their social work team. So a lot of the responsibilities that might have been filled by DCFS itself are now kind of being given off to the neighborhood collaboratives. So we're part of 10 different agencies that service all of Cuyahoga County, every single zip code, providing resources and supports to families to stabilize. And, you know, if you don't have your kiddos reunify, hopefully it's always the goal. We provide visitation and rental assistance. So in Lakewood alone, we're providing, you know, tons of resources and supports, rental assistance, utility assistance, a lot of the things that LCSC isn't able to do, we're handling. So if you have a kiddo in your home under 18, you know, or 22 with disability, you know, we're able to help. And we have a lot of nimbleness because of it, because of the funding. There's not a lot of restrictions, which makes us really able to do things that no one else is able to do. So it's a really impactful program. Danielle, I used to work for that team, so I'm sure she can speak to the kind of work that we do. But it's a real struggle now because our referrals are really high. 1 month we had over 60 new referrals, where back in the day it was maybe 20 a month. You know, and it's just a team of 3 social workers and a resource specialist. So any bit of funding would help. We would definitely be grateful. So,
Thank you. I mean, it's, you know, the county's referring more and they're cutting, so.
yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. So I certainly, you know, I don't like to make verbal motions on the floor to kind of clean up the language in this ordinance as far as the authorized expenses go, but I would certainly welcome, you know, a deferral tonight based upon our conversation, and then add some language in, Councilperson Stribig's language, make sure we have flexibility about it being used, be able to use for operations or capital, and then go from there. Now, process-wise, I think, Councilperson Stribig, if you could put your suggestions in an email or something written form, and then I can coordinate with Director Mahoney to make sure that they would cover what Director Barry is talking about. And then we can go ahead and have that revised language at the next committee meeting, and kind of also give our colleagues a chance to think about it as well. Yeah, Councilman Bullock.
A couple things. First, I have some questions before the Human Services discussion, and I have some follow-up for Director Barry. I kind of want to go make sure I understand a couple of the technical clauses and then get clarification about the current draft of authorized expenditures. So there's a few things here, but Director Barry, can you remind us the timeline for the budget? Our budget is January 1 to December 31. The county's budget is same or different? So the point is the changes that you anticipate or you receive notice of take effect when?
The county's budget, they have a very odd system. Our contract is actually December 1 through, or not December 1, January 1 through December 31, 2026 and 2027. But the actual financial piece is April through March.
Understood. So you received information that your 3/4 of the financial year will get a 25% cut.
And it's a retroactive cut, so it's actually back to January 1. And unfortunately, I don't want to throw stones or anything, but we had to actually solicit this information. They said that they were going to tell us, and then something happened, and then they didn't tell us. So we're actually just coming into this information. They had told us that they were maybe planning on doing this a little while back last year, but they've delayed. So I actually don't know when they will get the contract amendments out. All of us have to actually do all the contracting documents and go through it, all 10 agencies, so you can imagine what that is. So within the next 2 months, I'm assuming this will resolve.
You said you identified a funding source that will cover for this year and into next. Can you share a little more on that?
Yeah, we were able to work with the Lakewood Foundation. They have a fund through the Lake that came from the Lakewood Hospital Association. And we were able to kind of develop a program that we're moving forward with, where one of our clinical manager for this program is going to work a little bit, 70% of her time, also on an 18 to 59 crisis intervention generalist position. So they're going to transfer $60,000 per year for that position. So that helps reduce the burden, but we had to eliminate 2 positions that were unfilled, and we also had to reduce a number of our line items for emergency assistance and other direct service.
Okay, so your point is current employees you think are taken care of, but
yes,
FTEs is reduced, case load capacity is reduced, yes, while demand is increased.
Yes.
Okay, thanks for that update. So if I can just keep pivoting, so just on the technical side, I'm not sure I understand what section 1, subparagraph D does with the point about no further bond shall be required. That's just a technical clarification.
Yeah, so I can provide an answer. That is, Director Mahoney can probably further buttress what I'm going to say, but just from a legal standpoint, there needs to be a custodian of the fund, and the custodian of all of our funds is the finance director. And the finance director technically has a bond, so that if the finance director misappropriated funds in the city of Lakewood, we have insurance for that. So that's just, every fund that we have has that type of language in it, so that if there was a misappropriation by the finance director, the city would be made whole. Is that an accurate description of it, Director Mahoney?
That's correct. I don't see where it says bond in there.
No further bond. It's in section D.
Section B? Oh,
D.
D. Oh, I'm looking at B, sorry. And actually, I don't have a bond anymore, so I'm covered under employee.
It's just director and liabilities and.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Oh, well, Metro Parks has a bond on our CFO. That's interesting. I guess
yeah, it's changed in the last few years. It's not necessary.
But to clarify, you're saying that the city has coverage. Okay, thank you. So I appreciate that technical thing. So maybe the heart of the matter is in C. Could I hear make sure I'm reading this correctly? So public safety related issues means police, fire, that kind of related matter, or is it a broader definition? And then certainly it's clear the current draft says including complete streets and ADA transition plan implementation and other capital improvements. I mean, depending on how we read the wording there, public safety related issues might cover operating already, or do you mean to, infer or imply that capital, all of it's capital?
We meant to start a conversation.
Okay.
And so our inference was this was the start, and we wanted our colleagues and the administration's input on what else would be. So I think Section C is going to see the most amount of revisions based upon our discussion this evening.
Yeah, just what I'm asking, though, is just as the intent of the initial draft is?
What was to have it limited to public safety, but I think now with some additional comments, health is also really important, community health. And then we wanted it to include complete streets and ADA transition plan.
Which is capital.
Yeah, capital. So we can expand that to be operations. I guess the point is that we knew that the state pretty quickly released the funds. We wanted to start the conversation. Truthfully, it was a Tuesday evening at about 10 p.m., and I was drafting this to meet the docket deadline. So my intent was to highlight that language so we had a conversation. Now, so I wouldn't read too much into like, this is not frozen in amber.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and thank you for taking the lead here. So the current draft would be public safety and potentially and health, capital and operations, and then for sure also complete streets and ADA transition plan and capital. That's what I think I'm reading correctly. So I guess to put my cards on the table, I certainly could support health. To, you know, maybe though the point here would be to reserve these funds for new initiatives beyond our norm. So, you know, I guess I'd welcome the discussion with the Department of Human Services about how we keep the services intact or as intact as we can. And there's some discussion to be had there because essentially we're partly an office that provides local services for the county services, and in other areas I think we match, and so we do some city-initiated services that may exceed county services. But I guess my own interest is in using this funding stream for new things that go above what our business as usual has been. So mental health services certainly could be one of those, especially if there's model programs around substance abuse or addiction or something like that. Now, I know that Mr. Berry's team already provides some of those, and so there's overlap there, but I think the spirit of this is something I definitely agree with, which is that we'd want to leverage the opportunity to do some new valuable activities or investments in the community, and not just have this become part of general operations, which could, you know, get absorbed in a bunch of ways. As difficult as that is, and I appreciate the briefing that the mayor's initiated tonight.
Yeah, and I think I will remind folks, and I think, Councilman Bullock, you were the only one on council when the medical marijuana thing came through, but I was on planning commission, and I think part of it was they literally had like a permit fee of 50 grand a year, and the intention was that would partially pay for some portion of an FTE of a police officer, because they weren't sure kind of what, from a public safety perspective, having these cash-only businesses at the time in the community, and wanted to make sure we were keeping our eyes there. So that's why I started with public safety, but I certainly welcome everything else we're talking about. And the new stuff, I think I see where your intention is, but at the end of the day, we get cash in, and, you know, we try to do what we can to plug the holes and be as smart as we can. That's where we don't want to be so restrictive on the administration that they can't, like, defer bonds in order to, right? So we spend money we have now, so we're not taking on interest later.
It's a good point, but I guess I'm always looking to initiate growing and expanding and innovating. And so there's a tendency often for us all to do what we've done before. So I'm hoping to provide supports for, this can be an opportunity for the former category, is in an ideal world.
Any other comments or questions? Council President Keppel.
Thanks. Director Berry, when did the county let you know about the cuts to the funding?
Officially, we heard 2-3 weeks ago. They gave us a initial heads up towards the end of last year, but then there was no word or any kind of movement. So I reached out on behalf of Lakewood and the rest of the members of the contract, because I'm also a co-chair of the group that is. And we met with the directors of DCFS and DCAP, and they confirmed that they will be moving forward with the cuts, and it'll be 24.4% across the board for this year. But they were not able to give us any kind of information about 2027, nor what they plan to do with the RFP, whether they will continue with an extension because we have that within the bounds of the current contract, or they'll ask us to write a new RFP, or maybe they won't even release one. I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Councilperson Hamilton Steiner.
Thank you, Chair Baker. Sorry, came in a little bit late, so I believe some of these points have been raised, but my first thought when I read through this also was related to Part C and just the definition of public safety. And if Health and Human Services could fall under the public safety umbrella. So I was definitely on the same line with Director Berry for purposes of this ordinance, and then also including mental health, as Councilwoman Striebeck has already mentioned. And if we are defining public safety broadly or limited it to complete streets, ADA transition plan, and capital improvements, and is there room for programmatic elements? So I would certainly want to see an expansion of either the definition of public safety for this ordinance or including Health and Human Services, which also would include mental health support as well. And then just the other point I want to raise up, I want to use this time to advocate for how we look at how we're allocating dollars within our government and looking through an equity lens. And I think the Complete Streets and the ADA Transition Plan is a good starting point. But I think we can take this opportunity, perhaps even with this, to pilot some sort of metrics that can be used as we better budget and align expenses with our goals for equity and accessibility. So really looking at through an equity lens and looking at how we're budgeting and making sure that we're budgeting our values and that we're investing and putting our tax dollars into who we say that we are.
Thank you. Any other comments? I guess procedurally, the proper way to do this would be to defer, and then Councilperson Striebeck, anyone else send their comments, coordinate with Director Mahoney, and then have a substitute available at our next Finance Committee meeting. But I think as an order of process, I'll go ahead and make a motion to receive and file the communication from Council President Keppel and myself.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And then I'll make a motion to defer Ordinance 15/2026 for further deliberations.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The next is a communication from Finance Director Mahoney about the Audit Committee. I will go ahead as a housekeeping matter and make a motion to receive and file that communication.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And then Ordinance 27/2025. Director Mahoney and I have had some conversations about it, but I think it's good just to give her an opportunity to kind of outline what's being proposed here and kind of the procedural history here.
Sure. Thank you. So years ago, the state of Ohio had suggested for cities to create audit committees to review audits. Many cities just kept their finance committee as the audit committee. Lakewood chose to create an audit committee. I served on this years ago. I guess it's been like 15 years ago. And basically all we ever did was have the auditors come in, and we tried to meet fairly often, but it just didn't seem like there was quite the purpose of it. So, I mean, the general purpose of an audit committee is just to review any audit findings and, sometimes have a presentation by the auditors or just a presentation from the finance director. Thankfully, the city has had perfect no issues for quite a few years. Just as an aside, we did receive the Ohio certificate again, which they kept saying only 4% of cities receive that. So at this point, our audit has been good and is good. And so I think what happened over the years was that the audit committee just stopped meeting because they didn't really feel a reason to meet. And so that's why I'm proposing just having either the auditors come to a finance committee meeting or you know, if council wouldn't want that, I could always present the audit. As I mentioned to Councilman Baker, I'm pretty sure, I know the president of council receives a notification when the audit documents come out, because I complete that. I think you might all receive it, but for sure the president does. So, and I did ask our State of Ohio auditor if we would be penalized for not having an audit committee, and he said they don't really look at that anymore, but always a good practice to have somebody, so Finance Committee reviewing the audit would be totally acceptable by them.
Councilman Bullock?
Thanks, Director Mahoney. Couple thoughts. First, I also served. There was a time when it was active, and I saw it was one of your predecessors who was the finance director at the time, and I saw some fruitful interaction. There was some accountants, some CFOs of companies who had insightful questions about all manner of things, not just the accounting practices and procedures, but IT, our vendor policies. So it became, at least for a couple of years, a fruitful management dialogue that I thought was helpful. And now, that said, I also do see and acknowledge that the meeting schedule tailed off, but my impression is that that's under the control of the finance director, not as much as the audit committee.
No, I believe it's called by the chair of the audit committee.
So it may well be in a technical sense, but I think in a practical sense, it's going to work most effectively if the schedule and the functioning of whomever is serving as chair is done in tandem with the staff, who are the full-timers in support of all these financial activities, which would be the finance director or one of his or her designees. So, this is, you've got some discretion and deep experience that I certainly respect here, but I think it's possible that a functioning audit committee could be meeting regularly and be useful. If the strong preference is that, I'm just one of 7 here, but to do something different, I'm receptive to that too, but I don't necessarily agree that it can't be organized and convened and operated in a way that isn't useful, because I've seen it be useful. It's just a matter of how we actually do it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, the main purpose of the audit committee as prepared or as suggested by the state was to review the audit and not extra roles. So.
Okay, so you're not interested in what I described, just the narrow definition?
No, and as I mentioned to Councilman Baker, I hate to have citizens be part of a committee that they don't feel that they're needed, I guess. And that's kind of what happened.
How do you know that's the case in all cases, in all years?
Well, I do know from the most current audit committee that I met with, last year.
Well, I'll conclude my remarks, Mr. Chair. I would just say, probably the audit committee members historically have been people with deeper professional certifications and experience than council members who tend to be generalists. We have our specialties, but I don't think we currently have a CPA or a CFO on council. So to me, there's value and meaningful value to having a committee of Lakewood residents, and we've had the benefit of some pretty experienced and intelligent people to serve on the committee over the years in some form to advantage our deliberations. Maybe that's an accessory to the finance committee, maybe not, but those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I've thought about this for a long time, just to provide my input here, because I think Councilman Bullock is correct that when run appropriately, it may provide some value. I do think that, I look back, I think this was created in 2007. we lived in a different world back then. I was just talking to one of the Sinagra kids, and, you know, dockets used to be delivered on Sunday night by police before council meetings, and so, like, information accessibility was a lot different in 2007 than it is today. I just mean that from a practical perspective. So, so I think there were benefits to the audit committee in the sense that you had kind of more technocratic people involved, but it wasn't really a full public meeting in the sense that, like, people knew about it and they would go. That's where I think if you have it at the finance committee level, you know, people know where to come to watch. They know where to go to get the information. They can get the audit document. They, you know, so from my perspective, I'm not discarding what you say because I think it's valid. But I do think that the other way is also valid, in that, you know, what I have a couple proposals that I sent to the clerk's office that would not fully repeal this ordinance, but essentially codify that the finance committee is the audit committee. So there would be an empowerment of the finance committee to serve that purpose. And then basically it says that the finance director will prepare a communication when the audit is complete, and it will be referred to the audit committee, and then the finance director will make the auditors available to come speak to us at a public meeting. Because I think in that way it would elevate the issue to the public. It would provide the audit document. And it would, and there are, you know, I know audits are, there's like findings, right, or no findings, or, you know, recommended controls or issues, or, so it goes, audits are, especially public audits, are very interesting documents because they even audit public records, you know, how you handle that. It's not just kind of financial controls. And there was some element to the audit committee that I don't think they ever functioned in, which is like, you know, mismanagement of fraud, allegations of abuse, those types of things. How was the public supposed to know to go to the audit committee to make those kind of complaints? And the auditor of state has already created kind of a hotline for that. Lakewood might even have our own hotline for it to report fraud and abuse. So it's one of those things where I think we're just different from 2007. Now, does that mean we need to do away with it? You know, I think we can change. And that's where I would propose amending this ordinance to kind of narrow the audit committee to be a finance committee. And I'd be happy to discuss my proposed amendments on the floor tonight. I talked about them in broad brushstrokes to Director Mahoney earlier today, but we can kind of propose them tonight and then defer so the administration has time to review. We have time to think about it. And then maybe at the next meeting when we're going to consider the host cannabis fund anyways, we do that as well. Any other thoughts or comments from Council President Keppel?
Thank you. I think that seems like a sensible approach. Director Mahoney and I talked about this, and, you know, I was on the co-sponsor because, and I'm not actually tied to repealing it. It was more, my concern was I don't like having committees on the books that we need to appoint people to that aren't actively meeting and that people feel like their time is, you know, being well used. In fact, the two council appointees, most recent council appointees to the audit committee, were on it because I was the one that reached out to them and asked them to serve on it because the council appointees before that, it had been vacant for some time. That was when I was first on council in 2020, February 18th, 2020. So like, I think there's been, you know, there may have been times where, you know, there was some good work and it sounds like a broader purpose, but for the most part, it seems like this has continued to be a situation where, since, as Vice President Baker pointed out, since its initial formation, that it's not necessarily the best way to shine a light on the audit. And so I think having it come before the Finance Committee, we can still encourage folks we know. In fact, the two council appointees who just rolled off and elected not to be reappointed because they didn't feel like it was really worth their time to do, would be happy to come to those finance committee meetings and listen to the report too. So, you know, I think we can all invite members of the public to that hearing if we had the audit presented before the finance committee, which would actually shine more light on it. So I think that's a smart way to do it.
Councilperson Hamilton Steiner.
Thank you, Chair Baker. Yeah, so in reading this, the question that I had, and Director Mahoney essentially answered the question I had, was just, you know, a particular reason other than for efficiency to eliminate the citizen review of the city's finances. But I do think that there is value to having like an external individual also review the audit. So, you know, as we're thinking of process, to use Baker's and President Keppel's words, is it possible instead, similar to what President Keppel had, is to have like an ad hoc advisory, so 2 to 3 individuals that are really, they know this is what they do for a living. They're not tied to the city at all. And they come to that finance committee meeting and sit up there and sort of help us sort of analyze and look at the audit and answer questions. And, you know, so we also have, you know, Director Mahoney there, but we also have these citizens that are there and they sort of are representing the citizens' voice, because I do think that there is value in that. And I'm sure that there are people that this is their land, is what they do. They like numbers, they like looking at this, and they would love to be a part. If it's just one meeting, they come, they, you know, can share sort of, here's what we see or here's what we're seeing, and, you know, they share their perspective and they get that opportunity to shine and share with us their talent. So I do think that there's a hybrid way that we can do it, because I do think that everybody, all of you have made some good points.
Yeah, and I will say that, you know, having been a part of, so my day job, the auditor comes in every year, briefs the board, and that's the whole idea, is that the way I've tailored this amendment that we can talk about in a moment is that the auditor will be here. So that's the third party, right? And the intention would be that the auditor would come so that we could directly ask a third party, you know, what concerns do you have, right? What should we be thinking about? And that person is independent. They're either appointed by the state auditor as a state auditor employee, or we have to pay someone that the state auditor authorizes to do the audit, right? Is that the way it works?
That's correct. The state auditor always has first right of refusal, and currently we have an independent accountant, not the state, doing our audits currently.
So I do think that you know, there still would be the opportunity, and other public entities, they're like us, right? Professionals in different fields, but when you read an audit report, particularly a public audit report, they make it very clear when there are issues, and they highlight them to a point where they hit you on the head. So that's where I do now. You know, I think what you and Councilman Bullock are discussing about engaging the public is certainly not a bad thing. I just think I would not be nervous about us not having the capacity to kind of understand and be able to ask someone who's independent about these issues. And I think in a way that would elevate it more if it were at Finance Committee as opposed to a Zoom meeting at noon during the day. So that's that, you know, but there's also slight negatives to that too, which you guys have highlighted. So I think there's benefit either way. I do favor having it at Finance Committee, though, just to be honest. Any other comments or thoughts? Councilperson Strebe?
Thank you. I'm enjoying this this conversation, and I see Mr. Bullock's point, Councilman Bullock's point, that, you know, we are generalists, and to hear specifics and warnings from people with a lot more experience in this arena than I have, is very beneficial. At the same time, I'm also hearing that if the community is not interested in it, then we have to go a different route. So I am anxious and looking forward to hearing your recommendations.
Great. So yeah, I put together an email this morning, and I'll, I guess, ask the clerk to prepare a substitute ordinance, but I'll just go through it this evening. So if you look at, the current draft of the ordinance that would repeal the section, my edits would basically keep 160.01 the same. There would be no edits, so there would still be an audit committee, and the audit committee would do all those functions. Where the edits would then come is in section 160.02. I would delete from comma to 2 Lakewood residents all the way through the end. So basically say the audit committee's membership is, the audit committee shall be composed of the Lakewood City Council Finance Committee members. So that would be the audit committee. And then I would delete section 160.03 terms, and I would add in a section 160.03 independent audit reports, and say the director of finance or designee shall, by communication to city council's docket, provide the independent auditor report, parens S, so reports, at least annual, and be available, along with a representative of the independent auditor to discuss with the audit committee in a public meeting. And then for 160.04, I would delete bylaws, so it would just read general rules of operation. And then I would delete, on a quarterly basis, the committee shall devise its own officers, governance, and place or time of assembly. And I would add annually to review the independent auditor reports and periodically as necessary to accomplish the purpose outlined above. So section 160.04 would read, the committee shall meet at least annually to review the independent auditor reports and periodically as necessary to accomplish the purpose outlined above. So that will be a proposed substitute ordinance that I will bring forward at the next Finance Committee meeting. I don't know if, Director Mahoney, we talked about it, but I don't know if you have any comments or concerns about what I've drafted.
Sure. No, I just have a few comments. I think the purpose that the state, perhaps before their recommendations of audit committees, was that maybe they weren't being shared with with council, and so that's the point is to ensure that the public knows about it. And I agree that a presentation during a finance committee would be much more open to the public than a committee meeting that's in the mayor's conference room. And so there is also, just as a reminder, the auditors make us all sign off on an exit interview every year. Most of the time everyone says, no, we don't need it. But, that's sent, I believe it's to council. I know it's to the, so that you would all have the opportunity to say, yes, I want an exit interview, or no, we don't need one. So that's part of the end of the process. So all that could be accomplished by just council saying, yes, we want an exit interview. So rather than the audit committee.
Yeah, I do think there is benefit to having the independent auditor before council. Just someone, whether it's virtually, right? They may, I don't know if our auditor is local or.
Oh, they're local. And in my past experiences, they're always willing to come to a council meeting.
They want to be let out of the hallway room that they crunch all the numbers and talk finally. Yeah.
I just saw them. They're here this week. So.
Yeah. So that's what I would propose. I welcome any other amendments if folks have them in between meetings, or comments or concerns based upon what I brought up, Councilman Bullock.
Thanks. Good discussion. I like the amendment you're describing and look forward to getting it in formal form. I did receive your email, which was helpful today. Thanks. I especially like keeping 160.01 the same. My reading of that, by the way, is broader than just a review of an audit report formally presented by our auditor, which is certainly included. But to me, I see a much broader reading that says, to provide independent review and oversight over just what it says, oversight over the city's financial reporting process, internal controls, et cetera. And so that's inclusive of, but broader than. And I think the purpose here, or the intent, and at least for some of the years it was in function, I saw it happen before my eyes, was improvements. You know, it's a dialogue with other technical experts, professionals certified in the field, a dialogue with our finance department, which is excellent. But nevertheless, technology keeps changing, our financial position keeps changing, the pressures outside of our city government keep changing. And since this was created, the local government fund has been cut in half. We went through a national housing foreclosure crisis. We had city budget cuts, with a bunch of changes, right? So the pressures that come to the city aren't going to be one thing and static and unchanging. So the idea here, I think, is broader than just helping to digest any given fiscal year's audit report. So that's the part that interests me. It sounds like there's value in having the Finance Committee be the home and the convener of that for now. The part that I want to put thought to is, could we, I think as Councilwoman Hamilton Steiner was alluding or envisioning, could we have our cake and eat it too, where we'd have the support, and Council President Keppel also said this, that, you know, we've got some people we identify, they haven't been meeting formally or used as intended. Can somehow this potential Finance Committee-led structure involve them in ways that are not just member of the public come and join? I think it's more likely that you know, a highly paid, highly skilled CPA would commit significant hours involved in reading through, you know, and digesting an audit if they had some formal role. But that's my thoughts for now. So I thank you for the thoughtful discussion.
Well, at this point, I'll go ahead and defer or make a motion to defer this action, and then we can come up with a substitute. And then I welcome. There's a lot of ways to do this. I welcome suggested language to the extent you would like to see it change, and we can talk about it more fully the next committee meeting. So I'll go ahead and make a motion to defer action on ordinance 27, 2025.
Second.
Motion's been made. Second. Any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. No further business before the Finance Committee. We are adjourned. We have 5 minutes.
Well done.
All right, so I'll call the March 2nd, 2026 meeting of the Housing Planning and Development Committee to order. We have 3 items on the agenda today. The first is the approval of the minutes from the February 17th, 2026 Housing Planning and Development Committee. Do I hear a motion?
So moved for approval.
Second. Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next 2 items are related. The first is communication from Assistant Director Boss regarding proposed code amendment regards to pet grooming services. So first, I will make a motion to receive and file the communication.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. The second item is ordinance 39-2025, and I will turn it over to Assistant Director Boss in the Planning Department to walk us through.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of council. As I run through this proposed code amendment here, hopefully it won't take too long. I believe hopefully it's pretty straightforward. This is we've had a handful over the last couple of years of just small conditional use recommended code changes. Understanding that we have a larger code refresh that's underway, shooting to wrap that up by the end of the year. This is it's a good example of kind of a small item that where we get requests that have come up a couple of times that we've had to work through, trying to help business stay in Lakewood. And I think the pet grooming has come up 2 or 3 times in the last 2 years. Recognize the differences that I'll walk you through in terms of what we're asking to amend. So this was sent up to council in November, referred to the Planning Commission. We reviewed it with Planning Commission last month in February. I put the draft minutes from the February, since we haven't approved those yet, at the March meeting. But there's 3 areas that we're asking to change in terms of the code relating to pet grooming. Schedule 112902, which is the broader permitted uses in commercial districts. That's where you see the P for permitted, the C for conditional, or a blank for not permitted at all. Across all uses in the commercial districts, 1129.18 would be a new section. There are a couple of other preceding sections of supplemental regulations. This would be a new section to add supplemental regulations specific to pet grooming itself. And then section 116103, these are the supplemental regulations for all conditional uses. I think there's almost 30 different individual kind of uses that have additional regulations that go with them when they are being considered for a conditional use. And animal clinics, pet grooming, kind of carry the same supplemental regulations that we'll review here. But just to highlight there in red, what came out of the Planning Commission review of this was that they wanted to make sure that we either defined and or covered the difference between pet grooming and pet daycare services. And so I will talk through that a little bit. I feel like we had that discussion. I wasn't necessarily prepared to answer that question at Planning Commission, but I've thought through it since then, gone back to the Ohio Revised Code. And I feel like the amendment covers it, and so I will try to explain that as best I can. This is how those kind of individual sections that I outlined exist today. And so Schedule 112902 there at the top, this is just a portion, obviously, of that whole table that goes through all of the different uses. And so under the header of other retail services, you've got 3 kind of pet-related items. There's animal clinics and hospitals, veterinarian offices, and then grooming services. They're all treated the same right now, so they're not allowed in C1. In C2, they're all conditional, and so they would have to go through Planning Commission to seek approval to have one of those in a C2 districted property. In C3, they're all permitted, so you don't have to get any zoning approvals. You can just have your pet grooming or your animal clinic in a C3 district property. And then there's a conditional use for public school. So when someone comes and applies to have an animal clinic, a hospital, or a grooming service in a C2 districted property, they're supposed to meet these three regulations. And these are under 116103. These are the supplemental regulations for those uses. Not all conditional uses have supplemental regulations. Some, they just go under 116102. I think it's 02, there are what's called the general conditions, and those are just, they apply to all conditional uses regardless of what they are. It's like not harmful to adjacent properties, is not going to impede further development according to the code. Like they're general standards that everybody has to abide by, and that in the absence of any other regulations, what Planning Commission uses to guide their review. Some uses like these have additional regulations that are levied on them that they're supposed to meet. So these were passed back in 1996, so arguably they're a little dated. We see that a lot, obviously, with our codes. While we're doing the refresh, a lot of code is kind of from that time frame. But the two main things that we have had consistent issues with is the requirement for 4 off-street parking spaces for every veterinarian or groomer practicing at that location. That's pretty arduous for any business to have 4 off-street spaces for every point of sale or service within that building. That's always an issue, especially in our smaller, groomers tend to be smaller businesses. They fall into those like the 2,500 square foot or smaller storefront spaces, more retail oriented, and oftentimes they cannot provide off-street parking. And so it raises an issue. Everyone typically understands the no outside runs, stalls, or cages shall be permitted. Especially for groomers, that's not necessarily a requirement of their business. We'll talk about boarding in a little bit because then that typically comes in for boarding. And then the last one is very difficult, is that the proposed use shall not be located in any structure housing a residential use. And so anywhere in Detroit and Madison, in most mixed-use retail buildings, you will find smaller retail storefronts that groomers tend to want to fit into, and then a residential use above them. And so most grooming businesses have 2 strikes against them when they're trying to come in and trying to find somewhere on Detroit or Madison to locate. It's very difficult. And so I kind of talked through them, but the 3 key issues that we've had specific to grooming services, because people in Lakewood like their dogs, they like them groomed, and it has been something that's been popular. It's been kind of, we've seen a lot of these, I will say. As someone, a layperson or a groomer is looking for a business location, there is really no discernible difference between C2 and C3 retail storefronts. Rather than trying to show them a map and showing the interspersed kind of nature of C2 and C3 in our zoning map, sometimes you would expect how we have C1 kind of in the heart of the city, you would then maybe expect C2 to be next and then C3 to be on the outside of a city in a typical kind of zoning intensity. We don't have that. We have interspersed groups of C2 and C3 locations, so it can be frustrating for someone trying to find that C2 parcel or a C3 parcel in there. The prohibition on residential retail kind of goes counter to our community vision in that trying to enhance and promote mixed use. And then that parking requirement, just generally in terms of applying our parking code, it appears fairly arbitrary. It vastly exceeds any other retail use or similar business model that's out there. So what we did when we took a look at this, there's kind of 4 main things that I'll walk through here in terms of this amendment. So we looked at permitting pet grooming itself. We viewed, in terms of those existing uses, animal clinics, hospitals, veterinarian offices, they carry specific requirements and intensities, don't necessarily disagree with the way that they're laid out now. But grooming, we kind of came to understand and recognize that as a less intense, it's more of a retail use in terms of its turnover, the customer base, the time that an animal spends in that area, and the size of the kind of the retail spaces and the intensity of the use is more akin to another similar retail size business. So we're trying to address that kind of inconsistency of when you look at, like the example here is Bonneview. in the upper right. It's C3 on the right, C2 on the left. You know, try to explain to a dog groomer who's trying to find a storefront, like, what's the difference? And like, so I get that point. So we're trying to make it easier for pet groomers to find a location in Lakewood. The second thing is our current code does not delineate pet boarding. And so we have pet boarding businesses that are there. And I felt like this was an important thing to kind of build in because pet boarding is one of the few pet businesses that is regulated by Ohio State Code under ORC 956. It talks about the regulation and licensing of dog kennels. In our research, we recognize that pet boarding is a more intense use than grooming. And so we wanted to kind of differentiate between those two. The duration that an animal spends in a building, duration typically you can draw that kind of correlation to noise, odors, the requirement for pet exercise, and all the other things that come with the longer an animal spends in a space that's not their home. So it is a more intensive use. We would recommend that pet boarding be kind of set aside as a separate use. It's not in the use table right now. It's not in the schedule. And that it would remain conditional in C2, permitted in C3. We have pet boarding in C3 right now on like I think it's the Dog Inn or whatever on West 117th. So businesses in the higher, more intense C3 district is probably appropriate. To go back to the Planning Commission discussion, what about a daycare, a doggy daycare or a pet daycare that doesn't have an overnight use? So the Ohio Revised Code does not define or delineate a kennel or a boarding business based on duration. So it is based on the use itself, no matter if the animal's there for a couple hours or it's there overnight. I didn't know that when we had the discussion with Planning Commission. So I'm comfortable recommending that we leave the amendment as it is and we treat any boarding, if it's doggy daycare for a couple hours during the day or overnight, the intensity, I believe, is still consistent there. The dog, if its dog's there for 8 hours during a day, it's still going to need to exercise. There's probably still that requirement for maybe an outdoor run, those more intensive uses in terms of that may correlate to more noise, those types of things. Then a groomer, the dog's only there for maybe an hour or two before dropped off, picked up. So based on the Planning Commission recommendation, we would treat the doggy daycare the same as any other boarding use. That's what I'm recommending. And so the general standards, so if you had a boarding use that wanted to move into a C2 district, we would still have that as a conditional use. Because of the inherent differences, there may be outdoor runs, there may be other things that go with that boarding use. And so we would still want that to go through Planning Commission, just like a clinic or a vet office or something like that. But those supplemental regulations that we would still recommend that you strike those. You take away the parking requirement, you take away the prohibition on residential mixed use, but obviously the general standards are still going to apply. A review is still going to happen in those cases. And so the general standards, I believe, are adequate to cover the same things that the supplemental regulations, I think, are kind of targeting. The third piece is that to keep grooming separate from boarding and daycare, we are proposing a new section of 1129.18. So in 1129, which is the commercial district chapter, there are a couple of supplemental regulation paragraphs kind of thrown at the end. So what we did is I kind of took the acceptable portions of the old 1161 supplemental regulations. If you take away the residential prohibition, the parking requirement, I kind of reworded those, the main things that have come up consistently in Planning Commission reviews, and made those kind of, this is what delineates pet grooming from boarding or daycare. And that's that no overnight boarding or outside animal runs, stalls, or cages shall be permitted. And then if it is adjacent to a residential use, that you provide for adequate ventilation, odor control, and soundproofing measures. Both of those things have been consistent conditions that have come up the last two times that groomers have come through Planning Commission with this kind of very awkward conditional use review pending a code amendment. And then the last thing is that the parking for all these pet uses, the groomers, the clinics, we treat it like any other retail use. That 4 spaces per vet is just viewed as arduous. We would make it, it's also very inconsistent with the current parking code. Like I said, a groomer moving into a 2,500 square foot space would not be required to provide off-street parking, just like any other retail use. And frankly, I don't believe they need it with the drop-off pickup nature of their business. It's like any other retail use. And so we're just trying to make that consistent, and we would draw that out to a boarding business, a vet business, anything. You treat them like a vet or like a retail use. And so if it's a big boarding business, they would require off-street parking. If it's a big vet, they would require off-street parking. But if it's typically a boarding and a vet is not going to fit into a 2,500 square foot storefront. A groomer will. And so inherently, vets, boarding places, those things are going to have parking requirements. Groomers may not. So that's how I've kind of delineated it. Top level summary, but the language and the detail is in the ordinance itself. That go through each of those sections, the modified 112902 schedule that then breaks out all those uses to include boarding, the new 1129.18 supplemental regulations for groomers, and then the striking of that paragraph from 116103, basically doing away with the addition, those old regulations for animal clinics, vet offices, and grooming services under a conditional use. So pending any discussion or questions, hopefully this is referred back to full council with a recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boss. I appreciate the time putting in this just to kind of, it seems like a common sense cleanup of some of our kind of strange little quirks of our zoning code that, that makes a lot of sense. One question I had is to the grooming part of it, but so clinics and animal hospitals oftentimes have overnight patients. Is that taken into account here? So they're treated like a boarding facility?
So under the revised schedule of uses, like animal clinics, hospital, I think I consolidated them all down to one line. I mean, an animal clinic and a hospital now is kind of the same use, but so they would be conditional, just like boarding would be conditional in C2, permitted in C3. So basically those requirements aren't changing. It's just grooming that we're becoming more flexible, doing away with some of those, the arduous parking requirements and stuff for the uses.
Great, thank you. Anybody on the committee with questions? Councilperson Baker.
Thank you, Assistant Director Boss. I love your, reminds me of my time on Planning Commission. What I will ask is C1, walk me through that, why it's still not permitted there.
I would say, Councilman, I think our understanding of we're still trying to, under the current code, without getting too much into the refresh, just trying to allow this in C2 that's our retail district. C1 as an office, we felt like probably too much of a stretch right now.
You think C1 is basically just the western edge of Madison, right?
It's downtown is the main, the heart of Lakewood. It is, I mean, C1 is defined as our office commercial use, and so we didn't really want to cross that line right now.
So why is the area of Madison also C1?
That is something that I am working to fix under the code refresh. At some point, I don't know who, someone thought that, and those on council that have been longer with some history may know, when they passed that last zoning map probably 15, 20 years ago, someone envisioned some growth of office on the west end of Madison. For whatever reason, I don't know. Yeah, I think it was a very aspirational, yeah. But I think what we will be proposing, and not to get ahead of the code refresh, is that is likely more appropriate as a C2 or a C3 district, just based on what's there and what we would want to see there in the future.
Yeah, I ask because, and I know you know, because there was a business owner that wanted to go into that area. And so I'm wondering did you even consider making it conditional to see if you would even allow them to come to Planning Commission and make a case for it, as opposed to having it restricted and not allowed?
I mean, you could add a C to that district. I felt like we're gonna correct that, I think, with the zoning refresh. And so I was just trying to keep this simple, and not even like kind of delve into the C1. I understand that issue. I think there's plenty of C2 and C3 properties right now, and we do have a plan to correct that, I think, in the next, 8 months, 6 to 8 months.
You want to let the floodwater go over the top. You don't want to break down the dam.
Not right now. I think if someone wanted to, I mean, we would just steer them to a C2, C3 right now, pending the refresh. So for us, just trying to stay kind of within the bounds of existing districts without changing the map, which always seems like a huge issue to me, is that when you open up the zoning map, then there's always lots of other, like, well, what about this, and what about this, and what about this? And so I'm just trying to keep this kind of laser focused on grooming for right now.
Yeah, that's where a nice little C might help, but that's as opposed to a dash. But not going to die on the hill. So, Councilman, other people.
Councilman Bullock?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. That was my question. I have it written down already before he said it. That was my one shot at looking informed on planning code. But no, I first of all, Dave, thank you very much for the thoughtful, detailed work. I'd love to get a little bit of an example of how this has come up in practice. I think the planning department is more in the flow than I certainly am of store permit traffic. It sounds like it's more future businesses that want to locate or looking for spots.
It was one in the last 6 months. We had, I had been working with that business owner who was trying to relocate trying to find something outside of the C1 district on the west end of Madison, and she was finally able to find a storefront on Bonneview, and it just so happened that it was in the C2 side of Bonneview instead of the C3 side of Bonneview, so we had to kind of work her through the conditional use process, which under the current regulations with Planning Commission, if you wanted to draw a hard line on those supplemental regulations, can you provide the parking? Is there residential in the building? The Planning Commission, well within their purview, could have said, no, sorry. But they were willing, based upon kind of my justification and having this code amendment drafted and submitted, that they kind of conditionally approved her to move into that location of Bonneview, given that this was submitted and being worked.
Super. Yeah, that's thoughtful. I mean, I certainly support where you're going with it. I think you've done some thoughtful definitional distinctions that's never come up in my experience, but I think it would be great if more pet grooming services might occupy the spaces currently held by vape stores, you know, maybe with less bright signage. So I'm happy to support it. I personally do think that we could include a conditional use in C1 now, and you could always revisit it. So again, I don't have to insist on it, but to me, that section of Madison is what I have in mind. And even if it was in the downtown, downtown probably the market rates will correct, or if somebody there can afford a premium rent, then maybe you let them. But that's all I got. Thanks. Oh, actually, I did want to ask: is there a county board of health role at all in inspecting or permitting?
I don't know about the county, Councilman. I think a lot of this is state licensing.
Okay.
That they get their licenses from the state of Ohio, and I don't know what the inspection.
I'll do a little Googling myself. Yeah. All right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Any other council members? Councilperson Keppel.
Thanks, and thanks, Director Boss, for always a well-prepared presentation. I just had a question. Any of the ones that have gone in where there's residential above, because we do have them, right, that they've been, have we had any trouble with residents? I'm just thinking in terms of, since they're most likely renters, they're not going to have control over whether that business goes in below, and then if they have allergies or the noise or anything like that. I know you said that they've had the soundproofing and allergies. Have we had any issues with that at all?
Not that I'm aware of. Okay. Just we've worked. I think I've worked 2 of these in the last year. One of them was an expansion of an existing. She got approval and then she didn't end up expanding. But that was the one on Madison and by West 117th, or Madison and Elmwood. that had been there under numerous names for 20, 25 years. No, I couldn't find any. I mean, most of these businesses recognize kind of the location and where they're at and the concerns that are there, and they try to mitigate them as much as possible. And so I put those supplemental regulations in there because they have come up both times from Planning Commission to say that there are things you can do when you renovate a space, and so we're asking you to do those things to make sure that there aren't any problems. So.
Thank you.
Thanks. So just one last clarification, because I agree with the points of my fellow council members about C1. Is your expectation that the zoning code refresh will address those concerns?
I believe so. Yeah, that's the current direction that I'm going, is to eliminate that section of C1 on the west end of Madison. It only makes sense.
So this is more or less a short-term solution to bridge the gap before we adopt it. Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions or comments from the committee? If not, I'll make a motion to favorably refer this back to full council.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. There's no more business for this committee. We'll start council in about 5 minutes. Thanks.
All right, we will call the March 2nd meeting of council to order. If you're able, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll now pause for a moment of silence. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Vice President Baker,
Here.
Councilmember Vixenstein, Councilmember Bullock,
Here.
Councilmember Evans,
Here.
President Keppel,
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton Steiner,
Here.
Councilmember Streebig.
Here.
Reading and disposal of the minutes of the regular meeting of council held February 17, 2026.
Move to approve without the necessity of a reading.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes. Without objection, I'd like to move item 27 to the top. And yeah, well, we'll do that first. Yeah.
Item 27, Resolution 2026-08, a resolution to join with states, municipalities, and other jurisdictions around the country to designate March as Women's History Month in the city of Lakewood by recognizing the struggles and celebrating the achievements of American women throughout the history of the United States.
I'll first move to adopt.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. And to kick off our discussion, I'd like to turn to Councilwoman Streebig.
Thank you. Thank you, President Keppel and Councilmember Hamilton Steiner, for joining me on this important resolution to recognize and honor Women's History Month. Before I begin my remarks, can everyone see me and can everyone hear me? Yes? Good? Everybody's good? Okay, just checking, because last Tuesday I was in this auditorium for the Lake Clifton Connector Project, the public presentation. And I was standing at the back of the room, actually leaning against that middle table there in the back. And this young man, about 5'10" or 5'11", walked in and stood directly right in front of me and blocked my view of the entire presentation. So it was close enough that with one step forward, I could have tapped him on the shoulder, or as some of my foremothers and forefathers would have said, could have put a boot in his rear. I did not kick him, but rather took that one step forward and tapped him on the back. He immediately rolled around to apologize and moved 3 steps to my left. He knew I was there and understood his error. So this got me thinking about my invisibility. When I clearly didn't have my cloak of invisibility on that I had left at home that night. What would make anyone walk into a space and not be aware of their surroundings? The people or the vibe, or just completely disregard everyone altogether? Is it plain rudeness? Is it cluelessness or entitlement? Ah, yes, there it is, entitlement. To enter any space without regard for other people to accomplish your own objective. So then that got me thinking about entitlement and the fact of having a right to something. Merriam-Webster's definition of entitlement is, number 1, the state or condition of being entitled or right. Number 2, a right to benefits, specifically, especially by law or contract. Number 3, belief that one is deserving of or entitled to certain privileges. And number 4, a government program providing benefits to members of a specific group and funds supporting or distributed by such a program. As citizens of the United States, we are entitled to our constitutional rights. When they are threatened, we remind those offending us that we have rights, just like the suffragists and abolitionists did before us, sometimes with a gentle tap on the shoulder or sometimes with a boot. There are times to be entitled when our constitutional rights are being threatened or when democracy is at stake. There are also times to read the room and remember dignity and respect for everyone, even though they may be invisible to some people. Happy Women's History Month, everyone. I see you and I hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Hamilton Steiner?
Thank you, President Keppel. If they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. Shirley Chisholm, the first African-American woman to be elected to the United States Congress and the first woman to run for a Democratic Party nomination for President of the United States. This quote sums up what women so often have to do. We have to find a way, make a way to get it done, to be heard, to be seen, when so often we are ignored and cast aside. The patriarchy pits us women against one another in competition for their attention, their praise, their support and allegiance. The tenets of matriarchy-driven leadership, empathy, compassion, cooperation, and egalitarianism is what is so desperately lacking in this country and at times in our own community. The patriarchy has labeled these as weak, but wise individuals know we are only as strong as our weakest links, and any country or community that ignores its most vulnerable is not a strong country or community. Lakewood has an opportunity to show the power of womanhood and collective community, with women holding all three branches of power within the municipal government: executive, judicial, and legislative. And if we include the school district, we have all major branches of governance under the leadership of women. Dare I say, the matriarchy is here in Lakewood. I am proud to serve alongside such strong women, women who are not afraid to speak their truths, women who are not afraid to stand for justice, women who are not afraid to fight for what is right, but all unique in our own ways, each having to, in one way or another at times, to bring a folding chair when the table has not been big enough. Chairs are still needed, as we all must work together to continue and ensure that we are fighting for women's pay equity. Women are still making 83 cents for every dollar that our male counterpart makes. Protection of and for women-dominated fields such as education and healthcare, ensuring safe working conditions and fair wages. That women are supported in the decisions they make regarding their reproductive health. And we ultimately support women by providing equitable access to healthcare, childcare, and career growth and trajectory. I can see no greater mission than to take action to uplift, empower, and support women. Happy Women's History Month.
Thank you. I'll just add to that, as you can see in the resolution, that Lakewood has a strong history of women's empowerment and entitlement to the right to vote. As we've mentioned before up here, that it was through the work of Bernice Pike and the Lakewood suffragettes that Lakewood women secured the right to vote prior to the 19th Amendment. So, and I see our friends from the League of Women Voters here in the audience today. A few years ago, I think it was during the pandemic, I remember being masked at the time. I remember going to the ceremony to have the plaque put up by the Women's Pavilion, so if folks haven't been there, that recognizes that accomplishment. So it's quite a feather in our cap. We have also had a history of women to higher elected office, as you can see in the resolution, and certainly here on council. Former councilwoman Pam Smith is in the audience too, so we've had quite a few wonderful elected women. Our current state senator was the first woman elected to that state senate seat. So it's really exciting to have this resolution each year to remark not only women's history as a nation, but also here in Lakewood. Do we have anyone signed in to speak, or did anyone want to speak on this resolution? Okay, all right. No, we don't have anyone signed in. Okay. Any other comments from council members? Nope. All right, so we have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution. After it presumably passes, we will do a picture down front. We invite anyone who'd like to come up and join us for that photograph, and we have a ceremonial copy of the resolution for the League of Women Voters. All right, we have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that motion passes. All right, we're going to do a quick photo down. All right. So without objection, I'd like to move items 1, 2, and 4 to the end. These are the items related to the ordinance, the band's ordinance for City Hall discussion. As you'll recall, in committee, we may need some more discussion on those tonight, and that way we can get through the rest of the docket, and if folks are here for other items, they don't need to stay for that whole discussion. All right. Yeah, and then I'm going to move to suspend the rules to read items 3, 5, and through 11 together. These would be the rest of the bonds.
Second. Sorry.
Motion's made and seconded, and we do a roll call. Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Dixonstein, Bullock,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Keppel,
Yes.
Hamilton Steiner,
Yes.
Streebig.
Yes.
That motion passes. Item 3, Ordinance 6, 2026. An ordinance to take effect immediately, authorizing the issuance of notes in the amount of not to exceed $4.9 million in anticipation of the issuance of bonds to pay costs of improving Bunce Road, Lake Road, Clifton Road, and other streets located within the city between certain termini by resurfacing and replacing concrete, together with all necessary appurtenances thereto, and approving related matters. Item 5, Ordinance 08, 2026. An ordinance to take effect immediately, authorizing the issuance of notes in the amount of not to exceed $850,000 in anticipation of the issuance of bonds to pay costs of designing, engineering, and constructing water improvements, together with all necessary appurtenances thereto. Item 6, Ordinance 9, 2026. An ordinance to take effect immediately, authorizing the issuance of notes in the amount of not to exceed $500,000 in anticipation of the issuance of bonds to pay costs of improving sidewalks within the city and approving related matters. Item 7, Ordinance 10, 2026. An ordinance to take effect immediately, authorizing the issuance of notes in the amount of not to exceed $125,000 in anticipation of the issuance of bonds to pay costs of providing new traffic signalization, together with all necessary appurtenances thereto, and approving related matters. Item 8, Ordinance 11, 2026. An ordinance to take effect immediately, authorizing the issuance of notes in the amount of not to exceed $2,370,000 in anticipation of the issuance of bonds, pay costs of designing, engineering, and constructing sewer improvements, together with all necessary appurtenances thereto, and approving related matters. Item 9, Ordinance 12, 2026. An ordinance to take effect immediately, authorizing the issuance of notes in the amount of not to exceed $32,695,000 in anticipation of the issuance of bonds to pay costs of constructing a refuse recycling facility, renovating refuse truck parking facility, replacing or improving the roofs of public buildings, including the municipal facilities garage, improving the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems at the fire station, improving parks, including pavement and sidewalk resurfacing, construction, lighting, and landscaping, together with all necessary site work, infrastructure, and improvements and appurtenances thereto, improving sidewalks within the city, improving Bunce Road, Crest Lane, Gill Avenue, Onondaga Avenue, Wayne Avenue, and Webb Road, and other streets located within the city between certain termini by resurfacing and replacing concrete, together with all necessary appurtenances thereto, improving City Hall, Winterhurst Ice Arena, Fire Station Number 3, Public Works Garage, and other city facilities, including renovating city facilities, improving the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems, constructing a storage facility, improving parks within the city, including Lakewood Park, Kaufman Park, and other park improvements, together with all necessary appurtenances thereto, improving sidewalks within the city, improving Edgewater Drive, Summit Avenue, and other streets located within the city between certain termini by resurfacing and replacing concrete, together with all necessary appurtenances thereto, designing, engineering, constructing water improvements, designing, engineering, constructing sewer improvements, and retiring notes previously issued for such purposes, and approving related matters.
Item 10, Ordinance 13-2026, an ordinance to take effect immediately, authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $15,845,000 of bonds for the purpose of currently refunding all or a portion of the city's various purpose improvement and refunding bonds. Series 2016A, dated April 5th, 2016, to 1, refund a portion of the city's $21,210,000 $1,000 various purpose general obligation bonds, Series 2005, limited tax obligation, dated May 26, 2005. Refund a portion of the city's $14,320,000 sewer system revenue bonds, Series 2006, dated August 30th, 2006. 3, refund a portion of the city's $10,285,000 water system revenue bonds, Series 2006, dated August 30th, 2006. And 4, retire the city's $17,375,000 various purpose improvement bonds issued on April 9th, 2015, and approving related matters in connection with the issuance of the bonds. Item 11, Ordinance 14-2026. An ordinance to take effect immediately, authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $32,695,000 of bonds for the purpose of retiring notes issued for the purpose of 1, constructing a refuse recycling facility, renovating refuse truck parking facility, replacing or improving the roofs of public buildings, including the municipal facilities garage, improving the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems at the fire station, improving parks, including pavement and sidewalk resurfacing and construction, lighting and landscaping, together with all necessary site work, infrastructure improvements, and appurtenances thereto. 2, improving sidewalks within the city. 3, improving Bunce Road, Crest Lane, Guile Avenue, Onondaga Avenue, Wayne Avenue, and Webb Road, and other streets located within the city between certain termini by resurfacing and replacing concrete, together with all necessary appurtenances thereto. 4, improving City Hall, Winterhurst Ice Arena, Fire Station Number 3, Public Works Garage, and other city facilities, including renovating city facilities, improving the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems, constructing a storage facility. 5, improving parks within the city, including Lakewood Park, Kaufman Park, and other improvements, together with all necessary appurtenances thereto. 6, improving sidewalks within the city. 7, improving Edgewater Drive, Summit Avenue, and other streets located within the city between certain termini by resurfacing and replacing concrete, together with all necessary appurtenances thereto. 8, designing, engineering, and constructing water improvements, together with all necessary appurtenances thereto. 9, designing, engineering, and constructing sewer improvements, together with all necessary appurtenances thereto. Approving related matters in connection with the issuance of bonds.
Thank you, clerks. I'll move to adopt agenda items 3 and 5 through 11.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that motion passes.
Item 12, report from Rules and Ordinances Committee meeting held February 23rd, 2026.
Councilmember Bixenstein.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dear colleagues, the Rules and Ordinances Committee met on February 23rd, 2026 to discuss 2 pieces of legislation related to the creation of the Master Fee Schedule, Resolution 2025-71 and Ordinance 30-2025. Assistant Law Director Swallow provided information about the purpose and function of the Master Fee Schedule, and along with Finance Director Mahoney, answered questions posed by council members regarding the specifics of the 2 proposed pieces of legislation. Committee members were informed that Resolution 2025-71 will move fees from the city's administrative and business code to the Master Fee Schedule, and Ordinance 30-2025 will amend the corresponding sections of the codified ordinances. While most of the fees themselves will not change, Assistant Law Director Swallow provided an explanation of the few specific changes that will be included as part of Resolution 2025-71. A third and final phase of legislation will be forthcoming that will address public works, water, and wastewater fees. The committee voted unanimously to favorably refer Resolution 2025-71 and Ordinance 30-2025 back to Council for adoption.
Thank you. I'll move to receive and file that report.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 13, Resolution 2025-71, a resolution to take effect immediately to establish the master fee schedule by incorporating fees from Part 1, Title 5, Administrative Code, and Part 7, Business Regulation Code of the codified ordinances and superseding all prior fees established that are included in this resolution.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion?
Madam President.
Councilmember Bullock.
First, compliments to Mr. Bixenstein, who presided very effectively over his first council committee hearing and did a nice job, fine job, reporting out the legislation right now. And then the other point I just want to make is compliments to the Law Department and the Finance Department for putting in this spade work to do this I don't know if it's quite behind-the-scenes work, but it's attention to detail that is continuous improvement for the city, making, working with the city more transparent and effective, and I appreciate what you're doing, so happy to support it.
Director
President,
Vargo? Yep.
If I may.
Sure.
Thank you, Councilman. Just in interest of full disclosure, Assistant Director Swallow took the initiative on this, spent hours combing through the ordinance, and deserves the credit for her initiative. But thank you for the mention.
Thank you. And yes, we do appreciate it. I think it makes it much easier for residents to be able to have things all in one place. So it's good work to be done. Not glamorous, but good. All right. Any further discussion on the motion to adopt? All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 14, Ordinance 30, 2025, an ordinance to take effect immediately amending various sections of Part 1, Administrative Code, and Part 7, Business Regulation Code of the Codified Ordinances to move all fees identified within those provisions to the master fee schedule.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 15, report from Finance Committee held today, March 2nd, 2026.
Vice President Baker.
Thank you, colleagues. Finance Committee met this evening before this meeting to discuss 4 docket items, but particularly 2 ordinances. The first is Ordinance 15, 2026, which seeks to establish the Host Community Cannabis Fund and then direct purposes associated with that. So those that are unfamiliar, the state of Ohio approved adult use cannabis, and within the initiated statute, there was a certain percentage of money went to host communities, which Lakewood is one of them, with our 2 adult use dispensaries. However, there was some issues in the state government, and they didn't appropriate those funds to the host communities until earlier this year. So we wanted to start a conversation about how to best direct those funds, to serve the needs of Lakewood, but also associated with cannabis use. So there was some discussion of, initially it was public safety, which would include complete streets, ADA accessibility, equity, social issues. There was some conversation about broadening some of the allowed uses of those funds to include community health needs assessment, health-related issues as the funds are from cannabis use. So we deferred the action to allow our colleagues to suggest some more refinement to that language to better direct those funds. So that was deferred, and we'll seek to bring that up again and hopefully finalize the creation of the fund in the coming weeks. The second issue is the Audit Committee. So Finance Director Mahoney put together Ordinance 27, 2025 to repeal the Audit Committee. Essentially, the Audit Committee was created roughly in 2007 as a recommendation from the Auditor of State to have kind of an independent, community-based audit committee that would review the city's audit reports. It was kind of something that the state auditor was pushing statewide. It has somewhat fallen out of use a little bit. The state auditor no longer requires it. So we had some really interesting discussion in committee about how do we take that function, have the audit report come to the Finance Committee, have the Finance Committee serve the role of the Audit Committee so that council and the public still have an opportunity to interact with the independent auditor to see how we're doing, what we're doing well, what we can improve upon. And once again, there was some suggestions in committee about not fully repealing it and kind of modifying the language to still have that function served, but maybe have it served in a different way. So we also deferred that action for a little bit more refinement. And in the coming weeks, we'll consider both of these ordinances and report them out to full council. I'll make a motion to receive and file that report.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded. And I'll just like to thank Vice President Baker for your leadership on both of these issues. You're walking away from committee with more homework, unfortunately, but we appreciate all that that you do, so thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, on the motion to receive and file the report, all those in favor?
Aye.
And that motion passes.
Item 16, Ordinance 15, 2026, an ordinance to take effect immediately to enact Section 12965 of the Lakewood Codified Ordinances entitled Host Community Cannabis Fund to provide guidance regarding the use of new tax revenues related to the sale of cannabis.
Move to defer.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that motion passes.
Item 17, ordinance 27, 2025, an ordinance to take effect immediately, repealing Chapter 160 Audit Committee of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Lakewood.
Move to defer.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that motion passes.
Item 18, report from Housing Planning and Development Committee held today, March 2nd, 2026.
Councilmember Evans.
Thank you, Madam President. The Housing Planning and Development Committee met earlier today, March 2nd, to discuss definitions and regulations regarding to pet grooming services within the city of Lakewood. This is basically is a little bit of a zoning cleanup, having a little more, making it a little easier for these services to locate in the city. It also broke out definition-wise, made some differentiation between pet grooming services and pet boarding services, daycares, and animal clinics. Again, this is just something the planning department flagged as having been an issue with some putting up some roadblocks for some folks looking to locate within the city. So I want to thank the Assistant Director Boss for flagging this and cleaning it up. The issue was referred back favorably to all of council. Thank you. I'll make a motion to receive and file this oral report.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 19, ordinance 39, 2025, an ordinance to take effect immediately, amending or repealing various sections of the Lakewood Codified Ordinances to update definitions and regulations related to pet grooming services within the city of Lakewood.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes. All right. We are now to items 20 through 25, which are the charter amendment ordinances that are in committee of the whole. So I'm going to move to suspend the rules to read items 20 through 25 together.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Oh, we don't need roll call. Okay. All right. So motion's been made and seconded, and Clerk Bach is telling me we don't need a roll call. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 20, ordinance 16, 2026, an ordinance to take effect immediately, submitting to the electors of the city of Lakewood an amendment to the Third Amendment amended charter in order to change the frequency with which the Civil Service Commission reviews elected officials' salaries. Item 21, ordinance 17, 2026, an ordinance to take effect immediately, submitting to the electors of the city of Lakewood an amendment to the Third Amended Charter in order to add additional requirements to the process by which council appoints new members to fill a vacancy. Item 22, ordinance 18, 2026, an ordinance to take effect immediately, submitting to the electors of the city of Lakewood an amendment to the Third Amended Charter in order to change the manner in which legislation is amended and to remove the requirement that the entire ordinance or resolution be repealed, then a new ordinance or resolution be enacted.
Item 23, ordinance 19-2026, an ordinance to take effect immediately, submitting to the electors of the city of Lakewood an amendment to the Third Amended Charter of the city of Lakewood in order to establish a process and requirement for ward redistricting in the city of Lakewood. Item 24, ordinance 20-2026, an ordinance to take effect immediately, submitting to the electors of the city of Lakewood an attachment to the Third Amended Charter of the city of Lakewood in order to clarify the various paths in which the charter can be amended. Item 25, ordinance 21-2026, an ordinance to take effect immediately, submitting to the electors of the city of Lakewood an amendment to the Third Amended Charter of the city of Lakewood in order to allow council the option of implementing ranked choice voting.
Thank you. We do have, I'm going to shortly move to defer, but before I do that, we do have someone signed in to speak on this. So Chris Bindle, if you want to come on up.
Hi, Chris Bindle, 1212 Hathaway. So I originally planned to come here tonight to discuss updates on SB 63, but then I saw that at the last meeting that I wasn't able to attend, you actually introduced these resolutions, and I was glad to see that they were there. I read through the ordinance, and I'm not a lawyer, but I was pleased with what I read. It sounded pretty good. I had a few questions, but I know this isn't a question answer thing, but it looks like that our conversations regarding SB 63 were taken into consideration, and that's handled. And I do think that in its current form, we should still be okay. I do have, like I said, a question regarding that, but we can discuss that afterwards if we want to. But I just wanted to say I looked at the ordinance. I'm really pleased, and I look forward to this moving forward. So thanks for all your work. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Yeah, since these were submitted, they passed SB 63. So
it still has to go back to the Senate.
That's true. That's true. So it came out of the House, but. So we do have, just for anyone else interested in any of these proposed charter amendments, we have them scheduled for Committee of the Whole on March 16th at 6 o'clock. So we'll start digging into these more. So thank you. All right. So because those are all in committee, I'm going to move to defer items 20 through 25.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 26, communication from President Keppel regarding Public Art Master Plan.
Dear colleagues, in July 2025, Council authorized the city to accept a grant from Cuyahoga County Planning Commission worth $83,000 for technical assistance and community planning services to help develop a public art master plan and provided a 15% funding match. That work is currently underway, and a final plan is scheduled to be presented to Council in May 2026. Public art brightens our city, creates iconic spaces, and distinguishes us from other locations. As Lakewoodites, we likely take for granted the cheerful, thought-provoking, and awe-inspiring works we encounter each day during our routine comings and goings. However, a great deal of planning goes into bringing these pieces to the public. Lakewood's public art program began in 2015 with a public art task force and evolved into a permanent public art advisory board in 2021. The Public Art Master Plan represents the next step in our city's journey to be thoughtful and intentional about public art. The Master Plan is expected to provide recommendations regarding new opportunities for public art locations and types of art, ensure that public art remains inclusive, and develop processes and funding mechanisms to maintain the sustainability of public art. Before Council is asked to adopt a final plan, and as public art has been identified as a shared Council priority, I would like to hold a Committee of the Whole where Council can learn more about the plan's progress and contribute input. I have coordinated this in advance with the Planning Department, and this meeting is tentatively scheduled for March 16th. I'll move to refer this communication to Committee of the Whole.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion? Councilman Evans.
Thank you, Madam President. I had the privilege of being a council liaison to this project, and just wanted to say it's been a really great process. I've been involved in this kind of thing before. The depth and the knowledge and the planning that the team is bringing to the table has been fantastic, so I'm really looking forward to the updates and to the plan itself. And again, thanks to the Planning Department for spearheading the effort on the city side. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Council Member Strubig.
Thank you. I also echo Council Member Evans, and I also wanted to point out that the Lakewood Youth Council is very interested in performing arts and how we can include that as part of our master plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe will you take care of inviting them to the Committee of the Whole? 100%. Awesome. Thank you. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none on the motion to refer the communication to Committee of the Whole. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 28, communication from Vice President Baker regarding report from Complete and Active Streets Education and Advisory Board meeting held February 24, 2026.
Vice President Baker.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, the case board met on February 24th at 10 a.m. in City Hall, Council Auditorium for its first meeting. The slide deck from the meeting is appended to the end of this letter for Council's review and information. And the members of the case board are outlined below in the chart. As you can see, there are some voting members and some kind of more secretary ex officio, which include both council appointees and mayoral appointees. Assistant Planning Director Boss served as secretary of the case board and started the meeting. The meeting started largely with organizational housekeeping, as is customary for any new board or commission. Mr. Boss provided draft rules for the case board, which will be considered and voted upon at the next meeting. And Tracy Greenberg was elected chair, with Emily Lindberg being elected vice chair. Mr. Boss then went through some introductory remarks about the case board's role and responsibilities, the complete streets policy, the upcoming capital projects, see appendix slides, and this took up most of the meeting. The case board then moved to consider the recent referrals made by City Council, including the Madison Hilliard Safety Study and the Shared Use Path Code amendments. Time constraints only allowed the presentation of the Madison Hilliard Safety Study by Iteris, but case board agreed to consider it again at the next meeting, and the other item, the Shared Use Path Code amendments, were also deferred to the next meeting. The case board intends to meet at least quarterly, but special meetings can be called to consider timely topics. I will continue to attend these important meetings and report back to City Council so that we and the public can stay informed on the workings of the case board. I'll make a motion to receive and file that communication.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Further discussion? Thank you, Vice President Baker, for representing council on that board, and to Assistant Director Boss for getting it started. So I appreciate that among your many hats. All right, so any further discussion? Hearing none, on the motion to receive and file the communication, all those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 29, communication from Councilmember Hamilton Steiner regarding council liaison report. LaSwab.
Councilmember Hamilton Steiner.
Thank you, President Keppel. Dear colleagues, LaSwab met on Wednesday, February 18th at 6 p.m. in their monthly meeting location in the East Conference Room in Lakewood City Hall. The group discussed their committees and initiatives, including plans for the Spring Food Drive in support of Lakewood Community Services Center, LCSC, which helps to provide pet food assistance to meet the needs of families with pets. It's noted that LCSC does accept food donations year-round. However, these twice-annual drives serve to also raise awareness of the need that exists in the community. Emmy Hutchison, coordinator H2O, was in attendance to learn how H2O can support pet food drive efforts. Emmy and LaSwab discussed how high school students could be beneficial in supporting food drive efforts with marketing, education and outreach, and/or direct service the day of the event. Possible dates were discussed with information shared about potential conflicts with already set community and high school events. LaSwab members have reviewed the latest copy of the TNR ordinance, which they have been working collaboratively with the administration and Councilwoman Strebeck. A lot of time, effort, and dedication has been put into this effort, and they are all proud of the work and look forward to the discussion in Public Safety Committee on Monday, March 9th. I move to receive and file that communication.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion. Thank you, Councilmember Hamilton Steiner, for representing us there, and Councilmember Streebig for continuing to work with them on the TNR ordinance. And being flexible, we had to move things around in order to get that other committee of the whole in for the City Hall discussion. So thanks for your flexibility and continued work. All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, on the motion to receive and file the communication or the report, all those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 30, communication from Fire Chief Fairbanks regarding request for resolution, purchase of 2020 fire engine, inclusive of trade-in and upgrades.
Chief Fairbanks.
Thank you. Good evening. President Keppel and members of Lakewood City Council, I respectfully request passage of a resolution authorizing the purchase of a 2020 fire engine for a final cost of $580,000, inclusive of the $80,000 trade-in value of our 2010 engine, as well as all necessary upgrades and customization to meet Lakewood Fire Department specifications. The 2026 budget included $600,000 to refurbish the 2010 apparatus. Updated pricing has increased that refurbishment estimate to approximately $700,000. Given this estimate, the vehicle's age, and the 86,000 miles currently on it, proceeding with this refurbishment is no longer fiscally prudent. After evaluating multiple options, the LFD's Apparatus Committee and command staff recommend replacing the unit with a 2010 model engine with approximately 5,000 miles. This apparatus meets our operational needs, includes a diesel exhaust filtration system, carries a 1-year warranty, and provides a 7-day post-delivery refusal period. This approach keeps the project within the original budgeted amount while significantly improving reliability and extending frontline service life well into the 2040s. For this reasons, I am respectfully requesting your approval through resolution to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. Move to receive and file that communication.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. And Chief Fairbanks, I just want to thank you also for reaching out to us in advance and explaining the situation, so council members had time to process it and ask questions as needed. All right, discussion? Hearing none, on the motion to receive and file the communication, all those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 31, Resolution 2026-09, a resolution authorizing the Director of Finance to sell through trade-in a 2010 Pierce Velocity fire engine toward the purchase of a 2020 E1 Typhoon fire engine.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 32, communication from Fire Chief Fairbanks regarding Severe Weather Awareness Week, March 15th through 21st, 2026.
Chief Fairbanks again.
President Keppel and members of council, Severe Weather Awareness Week will be observed March 15th through the 21st, 2026, with a statewide tornado drill scheduled for Wednesday, March 18th at 9:50 a.m. This annual initiative provides an important opportunity to strengthen our severe weather preparedness across our community. During this week, we will encourage residents to review or update their emergency plans and supply kits, understand local weather risks, maintain multiple methods of receiving alerts, prepare for potential flooding, and recognize the role of outdoor warning sirens. The March 18th statewide drill also offers schools, businesses, city facilities, and residents the opportunity to practice sheltering procedures and test notification systems. In the coming weeks, the fire department will share preparedness messaging through our communication channels and amplify information provided by our state partners to ensure consistent outreach. I respectfully request council's consideration of a resolution recognizing Severe Weather Awareness Week as reaffirmation of Lakewood's commitment to public safety and emergency preparedness. Thank you.
Thank you. A move to receive and file.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that motion passes.
Item 33, Resolution 2026-10, a resolution proclaiming March 15th through March 21st, 2026 Severe Weather Awareness Week.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that motion passes.
Item 34, communication from Law Director Vargo regarding submerged lands lease, 17818 Lake Avenue.
Director Vargo.
Thank you. Dear President Keppel and members of City Council, the following is a resolution required by the Ohio Department of Natural Resources in the permitting process for lakefront property owners to obtain a submerged lands lease. In this instance, the property owners are seeking the lease in order to construct coastal erosion control measures. This matter was referred to the Division of Engineering for the city for review, which found no encroachments on any interests of the city of Lakewood, and the engineer foresees no issue with any planned Lakewood projects. I'd like to indicate that the city engineer is here to answer any questions to the extent council wishes to act on this evening. Otherwise, you can refer it to committee as well. Thank you.
All right, I'll move to receive and file the communication.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion. Interested to hear from council members about, there are several of these on the docket tonight. If we want to see them in committee or would like to discuss them tonight.
Yes, I think taking them each, this one, and to confirm, perhaps City Engineer Pepke can help, but like this is essentially a private resident seeking a submerged land lease to fortify their property or some other kind of use. And so from a city's perspective, I think it's just us making sure it doesn't hurt or hinder any of our services, storm sewers, whatever. So if this has been vetted, now we'll take each of them as they come, but this one in particular, it's none of our infrastructure, it's just allowing a person to do that with the state. Is that accurate, City Engineer Papke? Yes, it is. Let the record reflect, he said yes, it is.
Yeah, I'm getting a nod from Director Gordon as well, so.
So I'm comfortable, you know, each one's unique, these are each is his own property, but I think on this one, The city has no infrastructure here. It's simply allowing this property owner to get this interest from the state of Ohio, and we're not objecting.
Thank you. Other council members? Right. I would tend to agree that we're just going to ask Engineer Papke to come to a committee meeting and say the same thing. So, so I'm going to. Oh, we're still on the communication. Yeah, okay. So now I've got a motion and a second to receive and file the communication. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and that motion passes.
Item 35, Resolution 2026-11, a resolution approving the use of submerged lands for property located at 17818 Lake Avenue in order to permit the owners the opportunity to construct the proposed shore structure.
I'll move to adopt.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Vice President Baker.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate now that we're on the actual resolution. I mean, this is just allowing someone to invest in their property, essentially. So, continue. Sorry.
And prevent shoreline erosion, which is a good thing. All right, so we have a motion and a second to adopt. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 36, communication from Public Works Director Gordon regarding Nicholson and Wilbert Outfalls Rehabilitation Project, submerged land lease, and proposed easement, 1015 Nicholson Avenue.
Director Gordon.
Thank you. Dear President Keppel and members of City Council, the attached submerged land lease has been prepared for the City of Lakewood's Nicholson and Wilbert Outfalls Rehabilitation Projects. The submerged land lease entails the area of the project that extends into Lake Erie at the above referenced property to the east of the terminus of Nicholson Avenue. The official deed of easement for shoreline improvements was prepared by the city's consultant KS Associates and includes bluff stabilization and protection for new outfall pipes at the Nicholson Avenue terminus. Additionally, the resolution includes approval of the agreement for the proposed easement over the property owner's existing submerged land leased area, which is also attached. City Council is required to issue a resolution for the submerged land lease and proposed easement to ODNR upon adoption. Therefore, I request that City Council approve and pass the attached legislation so that the city may proceed with this much-needed project. Please let me know if you have any further questions. And as Law Director Vargo said, we do have City Engineer Papke here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. I'll move to receive and file the communication.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 37, Resolution 2026-12, a resolution approving the use of submerged lands for the property located at and abutting 1015 Nicholson Avenue in order to permit the property owners the opportunity to undertake lakeshore protection measures.
So again, I'll ask council members if we want to address this on the floor tonight or would like more detail in committee. Councilman.
Madam President, thank you. I'm happy to dialogue right now on the floor. I tend to think these are technical in nature. Typically, our oversight has been to dialogue with the Public Works Department to make sure that we've vetted the projects and also to get the background of the projects. So I think we could do that briefly here and also spare the committee schedule, which is pretty spoken for, a little time. Just my opinion.
Yep. Thank you. Vice President Baker?
Yeah, if we're going to take that route, this is, so the other one was allowing a property owner to do something off of their property for shoreline, revetment and kind of erosion control. This is allowing the city to do something on someone. So could you explain this, either Director Gordon or Engineer Papke?
Yeah, so this is for our Nicholson and Wilbert Outfall Rehabilitation Project. And this is basically the extension from the right-of-way of stone revetment to the east of the property. And we've met with the property owners. This is actually an improvement to their property as well. So this is the submerged land lease that's required from ODNR for us to build our project and protect our outfall and go forward with the project.
So I'm zooming in on this. Is this the, so what you're seeing is the Nicholson right-of-way going out into the lake, and then the kind of blob around it is the revetment, and you see proposed easement over here. That's what we're getting a right over their submerged land lease over there. Is that what I'm to read?
Yes, so they have an existing submerged land lease in that area that is defined as proposed easement. So that's an area that was defined already by ODNR. They already have a submerged land lease, so we're getting an easement over that area. And then the other areas that are identified there, that's where we're getting a submerged land lease for those two new areas there that are described in the ordinance.
So parcel 1 and parcel 2 are the new easement areas with ODNR?
Correct.
What about the area within the right-of-way we're building on?
That's coming up next.
Okay. So appetizer. All right, thank you. For what it's worth, 1 of 7, I'm comfortable moving forward with this this evening, now that Engineer Papke has explained it.
Thank you. Other council members? All right. We are on. We're on item 37, right? Yep, okay. So I will go ahead and move to adopt.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that motion passes.
Item 38, communication from Public Works Director Gordon regarding Nicholson and Wilbert Outfalls Rehabilitation Project submerged lands lease.
Director Gordon.
Here we go again. Dear President Keppel and members of City Council, the attached submerged land lease has been prepared for the City of Lakewood's Nicholson and Wilbert Outfalls rehabilitation projects. The submerged land lease entails the area of the project along PPN 312-07-031 that extends in a lake area as follows. Parcel 1 located to the west of the terminus of Wilbert Road, and Parcel 2 located to the east of the terminus of Nicholson Avenue. The official deed of easement for shoreline improvements was prepared by the city's consultant, KS Associates, and includes bluff stabilization and protection for new outfall pipes near the terminus of Wilbert Road and for new outfall pipes at the Nicholson Avenue terminus. City Council was required to issue a resolution for the submerged land lease to ODNR upon adoption. Therefore, I request that City Council approve and pass the attached legislation so that the city may proceed with this much-needed project. Please let me know if you have any further questions. Again, City Engineer Mark Papke is here to answer any questions.
Thank you. I'll first move to receive and file that communication.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Let's go ahead and discuss this one. Do you want to pull up the?
Yeah, the ordinance.
Yeah, so we can.
Could you explain this for me?
Yeah, Engineer Papke, if you could just give us a little overview here.
So yes, this is the parcel 1 that is the first one that is to the west of Wilbert. That will be that's the Wilbert outfall, and so this is the submerged land lease for that entire area. The parcel is owned by the Rambazeks, and it basically parallels Cliff Drive all along from Wilbert to Nicholson. So this is parcel 1. This is one of the outfalls that we're improving. And then the next drawing should have parcel 2, which is a continuation there. You can see from the right-of-way of Nicholson, and this is basically to the west of Nicholson, extending from our right-of-way, that improvement area, submerged land lease.
President Baker.
So are we, it's amazing that that's a parcel to me.
It's not really a parcel, it's their littoral right.
Well, I mean, the upland portion seems quite tough to build on. But, so for the interest we're getting, we don't need access rights over their parcel, or are we getting access rights over their parcel? Or are we doing all this from water side?
So, yeah, this is water side. This is basically a portion of their littoral rights that we're getting a submerged land lease over their littoral rights.
Now, are we compensating them for this interest, or because the state grants this right, they don't have to? I'm just curious as to how this is working.
Basically, I believe we pay, it's like a penny a square foot a year.
We're paying the state, you mean, yeah.
Yeah, for the submerged land lease. It's like a 50-year term.
Now, do we have to get the sign-off of the upland landowner, or no?
We do, because this is their littoral rights. And in the presentation there, you'll see the Rambazeks have agreed to give us the authority to get a submerged land lease over their littoral rights.
I've heard littoral more tonight than I've heard in a long time. And essentially, we're providing erosion control for them too by protecting our own infrastructure. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, their land is also protected. It's a benefit to them as well. You're correct.
And are they, I'm just wondering how they would eventually develop that land and how this, but that's not pertinent this evening. So thank you. I think I'm ready to approve this if my colleagues are as well.
Thank you, President Kilpatrick.
Yes, Councilmember.
Thank you. Engineer Papke, for those of us that are not engineers, could you talk a little bit about what the outfall is?
So the outfall is where our stormwater basically discharges into Lake Erie. It's right now it has a drop manhole with a pipe, but that manhole is actually starting to show just from all the erosion from the lake that's been pounding away. You know, I think over 30 feet has eroded away, you know, since it was originally constructed.
So we have a pipe sticking out into the lake is basically what we're looking at there?
Correct. Really, the pipe's vanished.
Oh, I see.
The only thing that's remaining right now is a manhole there at this location.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other council members' questions? All right, so we are still on the communication, actually, but I just thought we'd talk about this while we're in the discussion for that. So we have a motion and a second to receive and file the communication. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes. Go ahead.
Item 39, Resolution 2026-13, resolution approving the use of submerged lands for the property located at and abutting to the west of the northern terminus of Wilbur and Nicholson Avenues in order to permit the property owners the opportunity to undertake lakeshore protection measures.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 40, communication from Public Works Director Gordon regarding Nicholson and Wilbur Outfalls Rehabilitation Projects, submerged land lease, Nicholson Avenue right-of-way.
Director Gordon.
Thank you. Dear President Keppel and members of City Council, the attached submerged land lease has been prepared for the City of Lakewood's Nicholson and Wilbur Outfalls Rehabilitation Projects. The submerged land lease entails the area of the project that extends into Lake Erie beyond the terminus of Nicholson Avenue right-of-way. The lease was prepared by the city's consultant, KS Associates, and includes bluff stabilization and protection for new outfall pipes at the Nicholson Avenue terminus. City Council is required to issue a resolution for the submerged land lease to ODNR upon adoption. Therefore, I request that City Council approve and pass the attached legislation so that the city may proceed with this much-needed project. Please let me know if you have any further questions. And finally, City Engineer Papke is here to take any questions. And I'll probably continue reading this in my sleep tonight, so thank you.
Second.
Sure. So this one's easier. Parcel 1, as identified, is basically our littoral rights, which is within the Nicholson Avenue right-of-way. So it's basically where the right-of-way extends out into Lake Erie. So this is us getting a submerged land lease for our area that basically would belong to us littorally.
One more time. All right, Vice President Baker.
And if anyone wants to know why it's so hard to develop on the lakefront in downtown Cleveland or Burke Lakefront Airport, this is what you have to do. You have to get a submerged land lease from the state, and it's not very easy. So that's part of the reason why it is. But that's not relevant to this current resolution, and I support passage of this resolution tonight.
All right, any other questions, comments? All right, we are on the communication. We have a motion and a second to receive and file the communication. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 41, Resolution 2026-14, a resolution to take effect immediately approving the use of submerged lands for property located at and abutting the northern terminus of Nicholson Avenue right-of-way, Lakewood, Ohio, in order to permit the owners the opportunity to undertake lakeshore protection measures.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Director Gordon? Oh, you're on a roll. You just wanted to say, Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes. All right, so we are going to head back up to the top. Item 1.
Item 1, report from Committee of the Whole held February 23rd, 2026.
Dear colleagues, Committee of the Whole met on February 23rd, 2026 to continue the City Hall facilities discussion and to act on the package of debt legislation. The City Hall facilities discussion and the debt legislation are interconnected because the administration had proposed that Council approve $16.5 million in bonds for the purposes of renovating 1470 Warren Road to be used for new administrative offices. Assistant Planning Director Boss delivered a presentation that built on the analysis of options that he presented at the February 9th Committee of the Whole. This analysis was more detailed and focused in that it directly compared building an addition on City Hall with purchasing Warren Road. The analysis examined factors such as parking, time frame, cost, and other considerations. Importantly, Mr. Boss recommended that if Council were considering building a new addition at City Hall, that the footprint of the addition ought to expand from what was originally considered in order to divest the City Hall Annex building. Mr. Boss recommended that the city move forward with the purchase of Warren Road. Council members reiterated concerns about potentially moving administrative offices to Warren Road, such as the lack of parking, the worry that purchasing Warren Road may saddle the city with more office space than it realistically needs, and the reality that moving to a separate location will divide certain departments and create inefficiency. Furthermore, council members expressed continued confusion regarding the structure of the proposed agreement between the city and Liberty Development. Previously, the administration indicated they are pursuing a build-to-suit development agreement with Liberty, the current owners of the Warren Road building. At this meeting, the administration expressed their intention to change course and purchase the building and execute a design-build contract. Additional questions were raised regarding the design of the proposed Justice Center and the level of renovation, as council has not been provided with renderings or drawings, and the estimates were based primarily on light renovation rather than full, which could create inequity between staff spaces at the fully refurbished Warren Road versus the lightly altered Justice Center. Council noted that the presentation by Director Boss reflected an estimated 8 months of design prior to construction on either the large addition option or Warren Road option, which Weber Murphy Fox and PMC estimated to cost between $1 and $2 million. Council members expressed confusion about why $16.5 million needed to be taken out in 2026 for construction that wouldn't begin until 2027. Given the number of outstanding questions and concerns about the Warren Road property and the fact that council had not yet approved the purchase of the building, council members were not ready to approve $16.5 million in bonds to pay for renovation of Warren Road. However, the urgency regarding space constraints within the police department compelled several council members to express support for a more limited amount of bonds funds to go towards design and renovation of our existing campus for the purpose of accommodating the needs of the police department. The administration provided a range of estimates on what this would cost. The committee decided that it would wait to receive a more detailed cost breakdown from the administration and make a final decision tonight on whether to amend Ordinance 07-2026 to include funds based on information received between Monday and tonight from the administration, or whether to go back to bond for this topic later in the year. Ordinance 33-2025 was amended to include the recently adopted council budget priorities, and then further amended to remove the proposed $16.5 million in appropriations for purchase and renovation of 1470 Warren Road. This ordinance may be amended again on the floor tonight based on amendments to Ordinance 07-2026. All other debt legislation was recommended for adoption and is on tonight's agenda for a final vote. I'll move to receive and file that report.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes.
Item 2, substitute ordinance 33-2025B, an ordinance to take effect immediately to establish appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Lakewood for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2026.
Okay, so this is the appropriations ordinance that we passed out of committee without the 16.5 in it for the City Hall and Warren Road renovation projects. If we wanted to amend Ordinance 07-2026, that's the one that would have that 16.5 or a different amount, as we discussed, and Committee of the Whole. And since then, we received from the administration the communication about with a breakdown of the $2 million for design work, and there was in the rest of that chart there too that you should have all received. So whether we want to allocate some funds, all the funds, we would need to amend this ordinance as well as 07-2026. Also, when we get to 07-2026, we'll need to substitute again because there were some pages inadvertently left off of that one. So regardless, we'll need to update that one. So I'll open up for discussion.
So it's been a long meeting. What, the 33-2025B, which was the one that, based upon some of from Councilman Bullock, we changed some language. This is the appropriations ordinance?
Yes? Yes. 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 So you can see in the capital improvement fund where we took out the, this is the right amount, right? Yeah, this is the one where we took out the 16.5. So there were other capital improvements.
So it would have been 32.
Yes. Director Mahoney's nodding.
Now, does this allow for design as we discussed in committee for improvements today at this current building for like the women's locker room or any other?
No. So I want to answer. So if we look at, I'm going to actually go grab, I have it printed out, the stuff that actually I can pull it up on my computer. Director Byington sent us. So regarding the amounts, so that the money that's currently listed in this appropriations here for the capital improvement fund is for other capital improvements, like Winderhurst and other elements. So if we wanted to appropriate money, if we wanted to take out bonds, there's two things. We have this is the appropriations that needs to be updated in reflective of how much we take out in bonds. If we wanted to amend 07-2026 to include funds for design, then we would need to amend 07-2026 to include those funds if we wanted to do that in bonds. And I believe, In the, we received the information from Director Byington Thursday. The letter, there is a chart on there that shows the administration is saying $2 million for design, whether we do option 3, which is the Warren Road option, or whether we would develop a new option or build on here for the design. It includes $250,000 for if we were to do Warren Road for to add on to the property acquisition price, and then $500,000 for temporary relocation of administrative functions. And then there are two numbers. They're the $12.5 million to start renovation at Board of Education building, and $1.25 to start here. So that's why I had sent some questions today about how those specific numbers are reached, because neither the 12.5 or the 1.2 was the full cost, the estimated cost on the PMC Weber Murphy Fox to do both of those buildings in completion. And then they also list, if we were to go with the route of developing a new option or expanding here, 1.5 to start renovations here at City Hall. Director Byington, did you want to add anything to that?
Thank you, President Keppel. Members of council, just to clarify, that was a good recap, but the questions that you had asked, I could just clarify on the record a little bit that the 12.5 contract amount for renovation, that was just part of it. The $2 million on the top line for design, that was included. So it was 14.5 altogether for the contract. And the way that we came to the 14.5 number was just to take Liberty's all-in number for acquisition and renovation of 16.25, and we subtracted out the acquisition cost of 1.7, which left us about 14.5. We rounded to 14.5. So that's how we came to that number. And then the 1.5 million for the contract or any renovations to start in current City Hall and develop the new option column, that's just for phase 1. And phase 1 is the renovation of the garden level for the police detectives expansion there. I misspoke. Develop under that option, it also included being able to construct the locker rooms, women's locker rooms, which option 3 didn't have in the 1.25 yet.
I'm sorry, option 3 did not?
Option 3, that brings us through all of the phase 1 renovation and would get us started. We may be able to complete it, just depending on, we should have a little extra money through the temporary relocation fund of $500,000. So we should be able to get through with both. But I just wanted to clarify, the 1.5 was only, both of them was just starting the phase 1 of the construction. It's not all of it. That's why it's only 1.5.
But addressing our urgent need of the women's locker room and the police
both of them.
department.
We would be able to do that with option 3 as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. So one of the things that we had discussed at the Committee of the Whole was the potential of including amending Ordinance 07-2026 with funds for, unless council members are ready to move forward with the full amount, but since we took it out, I'm guessing that's not what council members are looking forward to doing. We could include the $2 million for design, the temporary relocation, and funds to begin that garden level phase 1. Now, one of the questions we had asked too is why construction funds in 2026 if we're mostly a design year. However, the phase 1 level of that design may not need 8 months of design. Would that be fair to say, Director Byington?
Yes, and through you, the option 3, we were asking for all of it because it was going to be design build, so there'd be a larger contract. And under the develop the new option, we were moving towards the direction of design bid build for just the phase.
Madam President.
Yeah,
if I
Mayor
could.
George.
Yes, and I think this is something I've spoken with you a little bit about, and Vice President Baker, understanding that and listening to the council might not be ready to approve the entire 16.5. There is the option, too, that we could look to just purchase the building, have site control, have control of our own destiny as we continue this process of evaluating what to do next. So that is another option there. And as Director Byington mentioned, we have 1.5 in the land acquisition fund, and the core request was $250,000, which would be what we would add to our overall request so that we could purchase the Board of Ed building. So again, to control our own destiny, also signal to our staff who are urgently wanting some updated space and are watching right now, I believe, but to signal to our staff that we are moving forward in a direction. So I just throw that additional option out there tonight.
And of course, we don't have legislation before us tonight about purchasing the building, but to the point of if we wanted to include those funds, there would be that flexibility.
Yeah, essentially the approval of the funds, and then we could work on a purchase agreement and turn that around to council in short order for either approval or not approval. But this would just get the funds approved.
All right, and we'll just reiterate once again that council did include on our shared priorities addressing particularly the police space needs as a top priority in the police women's locker room. And then I'll just reiterate myself that I think all of our staff deserve to work in, high functioning, good, efficient spaces, and that we want to make a good customer service experience for the public. I am not personally ready to commit that Warren Road is the correct path forward at this time. But I am still potentially open to hearing more about it. I do think that appropriating some funds tonight for design is an appropriate thing to do. But I'm interested in hearing my colleagues, particularly Vice President Baker.
Yeah, so what we have before us right now is this appropriation ordinance. Sounds like we may have a resolution to purchase the building at upcoming meetings. So I'd be willing tonight to amend this ordinance to allow for whatever we need to do here, because that's what I think there's a shared understanding both on the administration side and the council side that needs to be done. So whatever that number is, I would be willing to support adding to this.
Councilmember Evans.
Yes, I agree. Anything we can do to get moving on the police portion of this project, I think, is critical. It's what's brought us here. So if we can allocate the funds to get that piece of the project moving this evening, I'd be happy to do that as well.
Councilmember Strubing.
Thank you. I appreciate everyone's efforts to slow this down and break this apart a little bit more so that we can get moving on this in the right direction, and I'm happy to support that as well.
Councilman Bullock.
Thanks, Madam President. So to Mr. Baker, what's the this?
I believe it's design funds, and I believe it's between 1.5 and 4 million. I don't know the exact number there.
So just to be clear, because a couple of things are thrown out. One was acquisition of a new building. One was begin to renovate the police wing of City Hall. And then also design.
You got to design before you build.
One would think, but okay, so I guess I'll ask or speak in a different vein. So I'm seeing a chart that isn't on the, now it's on screen. It's not on the docket, I don't think, but this is helpful. So looking at the bottom section here in the right-hand column, a quote-unquote new option, I just want to ask Director Byington to make sure I understand what's being said here. So in the event of that contingency, the city will reset/restart a planning process to identify a new option/end state to best achieve the established priorities/criteria and begin the implementation involving design and potential relocation renovation actions towards the end of the year. So, and then reading this, so it'd be 2 million for design, 500,000 for relocation on a temporary basis, and then 1.5 for just the garden level. So my question is, what's included in the 1.5? Why 2 as opposed to a lesser amount or a greater amount? What does that cover? And I want to make sure that the established priorities and criteria, are those in the administration's view already set, or are those things that we're still working through as part of that potential design process?
Thank you, Councilman Bullock. Through you, President Keppel. To start with the latter part of the question, the priorities were provided throughout this, the presentations that Assistant Director Boss has been giving in regard to access points, functionality, all the things that were listed in his presentation. So if we have to reset, if we are moving forward with the contingency option versus the recommended, then yes, we would be taking those things into consideration during the planning process to determine the best route here. But yes, the 1.5 million would be available to start immediately with the garden level and working towards the women's locker room. The 2 million is kind of flexible. We put 2 million just as a base to keep everything high level, so that could come in less and provide a little more construction money.
So that's amount not to exceed 2 million. And typically, I'm familiar with that, and when it's cash from the general fund or some other account. But if we're going to bond for this, we're incurring a certain amount of expense to get those funds. So maybe could the finance director share, in the events when you have something like, let's say that we only needed 1.5, but we bonded 2, what happens to that additional cash? And presumably we would not want to overshoot by that much.
Planning, design, and infrastructure improvements are all in the same category. So we could use the remaining funds from design for construction.
For additional renovation. And then, I'm sorry, Madam President, the garden level is envisioned to include what? And I think I heard you say phase 1. Now, is phase 1 just the garden level of the police side of the building, or all of the police side of the building, and phase 2 would be something else in City Hall?
So again, high level and conceptual, our thought is that phase 1 would be the garden level renovation, which would allow for expansion for the Detectives Bureau, and there's one other police function that would be going over there. There's some temporary relocation that would be required of dispatch at that time as well, so that we could start the process of the construction for the women's locker room.
And so we know all of the details yet, or we know part of it and we're trying to work through?
We've been working off of, we don't know all of the details, obviously, but we've been working hard based off of Weber Murphy Fox's initial fit plan, and then working with Chief Fisher on the phasing plan. So what makes sense on when to locate and where to relocate in order to get the women's locker room done.
Okay, so for the moment, the Weber Murphy Fox design is the guide for the police wing renovations. And so there's some answers to the questions I'm asking. I just want to make sure I'm understanding things correctly. So hopefully 1.5 gets a meaningful distance, and maybe it could be 2, depending on how the scope of the design work goes. Okay, I think that answers my question. I mean, I'm happy to support that tonight. That I think is certainly clear. And I appreciate the mayor's point about the swift potential purchase of the building. To me, the question really is still, is that the right decision or not? And I appreciate that Mayor, you've been providing clear direction and leadership the whole time and kind of driving us forward on this, and I appreciate that. For me, I'd like to still evaluate that question, whether a second building or on main campus is where we should expand. I did hear you last meeting say that you're less interested in the main campus. Well, you've said that consistently. So I'm not trying to debate or criticize. I'm just putting my cards on the table. I'd be happy to support $4 million tonight for the dialogue we just said, and it's on the right-hand bottom side of the chart on the screen.
Madam President, if I may as well.
Mayor George.
I would just like some direction then on what exactly we would be designing for, because if we don't have a permanent location for staff, we move staff out of here temporarily, and we're going to replace that space with staff. Then they have no place to return to. So that temporary location becomes permanent. So I'd kind of like some direction on what we're designing or what we're doing, because I would not be comfortable with moving staff temporarily and not having any sort of exit plan or plan of what to do next.
Thank you. So I think this goes back to also, in terms of the design, so where we are right now is because we have to get the bands done so that the bond council can go out, but we're sort of just picking out a cart before we have a horse here of whether we're moving forward with Warren Road, because we don't have that legislation in front of us. But I think regardless, we would need design funds. So that is why I feel relatively comfortable moving forward with the funds for design, the temporary relocation, and beginning the work at City Hall with the $4 million. I do think, if council members are, to the point about if we go ahead and buy Warren Road and then decide later, I'm not sure what would happen that would change the administration's mind on this issue. And so I think we need to decide whether we're interested in Warren Road sooner rather than later. But as far as tonight, if we can go ahead and do the $4 million, we can at least get the bonds done and get some work going on the police side. Vice President Baker.
Yeah, so to your point, President Keppel, what this would do is provide a ceiling under which the administration can then work, right? And so, I'm not even, would temporary relocation even be able to be a bonded thing, Director Mahoney? To me, like capital clearly fits into that.
It would be capital improvements to a temporary location, so yes.
Tenant build out or something like that?
Yes.
Okay.
It's not relocation costs, like movers and things like that would be.
Okay, and because I think this is, we want to solve the space constraints at City Hall, but I think what we're being told by the administration is the only solution is Warren Road. And I've tried my level best to take in that information, and I don't think that's true. I think that there are other solutions to the space issues, and I think that they may be on this campus. I don't know that for sure because we have not had the level of kind of outside consultant, engineer, architect review of that fact. So that's where I am at, that like I want to solve these problems, but I feel like I can't accept that the only solution is Warren Road. And so I feel like we're being put in a really hard spot because, the solution is, the only solution is spend a tremendous amount of money, the most money the city has ever spent on, I don't know, adjusted for inflation, but, on City Hall renovation or new City Hall, or do nothing. And I just can't wrap my head around the fact that those are the only two options that we have. I refuse to accept that. And so, but we're being led down a road that the only two options are do nothing or buy Warren Road. And what I know tonight is we have bond anticipation notes legislation to appropriate funds for capital improvement, and I'm willing to appropriate $4 million additional for work here, because the other thing is not before us tonight.
Thank you. Mayor George.
If I may, I know this has been brought up by both you, Councilman Baker and Council President Keppel, we'd be happy to work directly with Liberty and negotiate a purchase agreement, because I know you both said that there's nothing in front of you for that. We'd be happy to do that and present it to City Council for approval. So just let us know if that's the direction you would like to go.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of can't vote on it until we have a thing to vote on, but we can certainly, you know, as I indicated, you know, I am not currently at this exact moment ready to say yes to Warren Road. You know, we can, I think there could be part of what I think with this design funds, and Vice President Baker and I talked about it some at the last meeting too, is that we could see whatever solution, you know, a normal process for this or a productive process would be having the stakeholders, members of the public, members of the staff, members from council, working with the administration, sort of with the criteria architect, what are we trying to accomplish, what's the scope of the project, and moving forward with that, as well as we can go ahead and start hopefully very quickly with what we know with the garden level with the police. So, you know, I can't say if you dropped a Warren Road resolution on the docket next week, I don't think I'd be ready to vote on it then either. So, or to amend it, or to adopt it at that time. Now, maybe I could get there. I don't know if other council colleagues feel like they could get there, but right now what we have is the bonds. So it might be, you know, if council members know that there's nothing that could be said that they would want to say yes on Warren Road, now would be a good time to say so we can have a sense of whether the administration should even pursue that path. Councilmember Hamilton Steiner.
Thank you, President Keppel. Thank you, and thank you for the administration for the work that you've put into this and solving the crucial space issues. So to President Keppel's point about the purchase of Warren Road, I'm not there yet. And I just need more due diligence done, and I would have preferred a more inclusive process. I would have liked council members to be represented and in the room and in some of these discussions that were happening. And I would have liked to see more public involvement, public engagement. I would have liked to see some public meetings happening about this to discuss the space needs, because ultimately we are responsible not just to our city employees and personnel, but we are responsible to our residents that are hurting, that are struggling, and we have now entered into a precipice of yet another war that our federal government is waging. And so I think we cannot operate in a vacuum and pretend that those things happening. I mean, we just previously in Finance Committee, we heard that Director Berry, some of his programming is being cut. And I'm sure there will be more Health and Human Services that will be cut. So I think if this had gone differently, if we had had an inclusive process, a collaborative, cooperative process, I think we might have been able to get there, but that did not happen. So this is where we're at. But I am comfortable approving up to $4 million so that we can start here on this process, because regardless, we know we need to address the space issue. We know that this space will need to be renovated, and so we can start on that piece, and then we can work towards together. You know, maybe we can group back, come together, and move forward. You know, after this $4 million.
And if just to comment on that, Councilwoman, as a reminder. And I know you weren't here back in the fall of 2022, but this, the City Hall space assessment was discussed is the budget process in fall of 2022. And we've been working on this process for a number of years now. I know council members even toured the sister building back in May of 2024, which we're getting close to 2 years on now. And there's probably been at least a dozen public meetings on this topic. And as you know, there's requirements for notice. They're posted on social media. They're posted on the newsletter. We've tried to get the word out on this as much as possible. And so I just want to point that out, that we have publicized this. We can't force people to come here, although we wish more people would come and join us and join the conversation. But I just wanted to make that note that we have had a lot of public meetings.
Yeah, thank you. I think to the point of there's a difference of a public meeting versus a stakeholder meeting, and to the point of, like, one of the things that's still up is whether or not council will be moving. And when, you know, the point was made that Liberty met with all the departments, but they didn't meet with council. So there was one department that wasn't met with to say what is needed in the new space. And members of the public, if this is about customer service, we should be talking to the public about what their experience is too. And I think we can still do that. I think that there's a pathway forward to do that. And with these funds, what I'm hearing is it sounds like council is on board generally with allocating funds towards the $4 million for design and beginning the police work. And so we can use some of that design funds hopefully to do that sort of strategic process. I'm going to go, Councilman Evans has been waiting patiently, and I'll come back to you, Councilmember Striebeck.
Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, I'm in agreement with my colleagues on process and what's before us. And I think this design process right now for this first phase, which again, I think is the most critical piece of this, is getting the room for LPD, is going to necessarily inform how the space in this building works out. I mean, I don't think we have to operate in a vacuum where we're doing one single thing at a time. When we start looking at that, we're going to start to understand opportunities and constraints better. That's where I see this process going. I'm also not in a position to say, hey, let's go ahead with Warren Road at this time, because I'm not convinced. I agree with Councilman Baker that this is a do this or nothing situation. Thank you.
All right. Councilwoman Striebeck.
Thank you. I am interested in learning more about purchasing Warren Road. I think that we start down this path of we're going to look at design here, and then we get to and then what? We do this design, and then we have nothing to look at as the next step. I think that looking at the purchasing of Warren Road for 1.7, I think that could possibly be the next step, and I would like to see some discussion on that.
All right. So, any further comments, staff, council members? All right. So, we are actually on the appropriations, but what I'm going to suggest is that we amend the appropriations to, move to amend to appropriate amend the capital improvement fund amount to add $4 million.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. I think it's listed in there twice. Is that the right ordinance or no? Oh, yes. Oh, sorry. Is it in there twice? So, so I'll amend that motion to increase by $4 million in both places where it is listed.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion?
Madam President.
Councilman Bullock.
Just clarifying for the finance director. So making the amount change in those two spots in the appropriations exhibits, are those the right spots for the functions we just discussed? Because one is design, one is capital.
They're all considered capital.
Okay.
So yeah, Exhibit A and B.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, and with doing this, that also will need to amend the next ordinance as well. All right, so we have a motion and a second to amend Ordinance 33, 2025B. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes. And then I will move to adopt as amended.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes. All right.
Item 4, substitute ordinance 7, 2026, an ordinance to take effect immediately authorizing the issuance of notes in the amount of not to exceed $1.8 million in anticipation of the issuance of bonds to pay costs of improving Winterhurst Ice Arena and other public buildings, together with all necessary pertinences thereto, and approving related matters and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. First, I'm going to move to substitute with what's in Granicus. There were a couple pages missing from this substituted version, so I'm going to first move to substitute.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that motion passes. And then we're going to move to amend. Yes. So anywhere where it says 1.8 to move to 5.8.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
Madam President.
Councilman Bullock.
So just want to make sure the legal interpretation or the clarity of what this would allocate funds for is included sufficiently in the ordinance. So we've had a lot of discussion about what the $4 million is for. You know, we're willing, City Council is expressing support for a certain step. Is that sufficiently specified in this draft of the ordinance, or do we need to otherwise specify what we're funding?
So there's Director Mahoney.
Yeah, thank you, President. So in a previous, the original version of it, it said City Hall. City Hall improvements, and that if I'm hearing what Councilman Bullock, we'd like to put that back in.
Yeah. So this, I actually had a question about this into the law department earlier today. So there's two different. There's two different elements. So and Director Varga can correct me if I say this wrong, but the law department said that we don't need to add it back in order for the funds to be used for City Hall because it already indicates public buildings. And Director Varga's nodding.
That's correct, Council President.
Okay. However, we could put it back in if we wanted to be specific about if we wanted to say for City Hall, and even be more specific about Police Department, Phase 1, and design.
Madam President, I'd be happy to make such a motion. I may need assistance in making that motion on the floor tonight, but to me that makes sense. I mean, we just had some good discussion about what we intend, and you know, I would hope that in the spirit the administration wouldn't say, you know, we're going to renovate some other, use the funds for some other purpose without consulting council. But since we're here making the amendment on the floor, to me it makes it's good practice to be clear about what we're saying.
So if you want to do that, you'd amend it in the first paragraph, and then on the last page you would add whatever language you wanted to add.
Of the project, so the project here is defined as and other public buildings. Okay. So also the first whereas clause, or the ordinance title.
Yeah, I said the first paragraph.
Okay, the first paragraph. All right, so I'd like to move that we amend the first paragraph to insert after Winterhurst Ice Arena, comma, City Hall Police Facility renovations, comma, then it would read, and other public buildings.
And you'd also want to make that motion for that last exhibit.
And then include that same amendment in the last exhibit on page.
Councilman, if I may.
Yes.
That would restrict us to just being able to do the police facilities. So at City Hall, I would assume we'd want to have design of City Hall and begin construction on a lot of different areas, so I think that would be a little restrictive.
Okay, in this, yeah, I'd be happy to include, all I'm trying to do is verbalize
Yeah,
what we agree in the spirit, so I appreciate your points, Mayor.
Yeah, we could not use this to buy and rehab Warren Road. That would have to come in front of council separately.
Okay, so where's the spot here that would?
If it still says public buildings, so it wouldn't restrict, right? Or do we want to just add the word City Hall back?
Yes.
Back. Just add City Hall back.
I think we all just want to be clear that the first priority here is the police space, and I don't expect that the administration is going to not do the police space, since the chief's sitting right next to her. So is that right?
Yeah, that's acceptable. Acceptable to me if I mean, Mayor, that in the spirit of what our dialogue here, which I appreciate, is that's your understanding too. Okay, so we could simply. We start from the top. So the
Amending your motion.
I'll amend my motion so that the first paragraph would read, well, we'd insert in the first paragraph after Winterhurst Ice Arena, comma, City Hall, comma, and on the page 9 also include that language in section 1 or item 1. So insert after Winterhurst Ice Arena, comma, City Hall, comma. Therefore, it would have the identical reading. And finally, I think would we not also need to do it in section 1, back on the first page? No, I don't think we would, because the project is defined in the proposed language I just described. Correct. Yes. So, okay, so that's my motion. Apologies for the lack of succinct skill in making the motion, but to repeat, that would be to insert after Winterhurst Ice Arena, comma, City Hall, comma, in the first paragraph, and also page 9, section 1, the same language.
I'll second that motion. All right, motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes. All right, so we have that addition. We have the $4 million added. So I will move to adopt as amended. Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. And that motion passes. All right. We are finally at the end of our docket. I'll just say, before moving off of this too, that we do also have the ability to go back out to bond again. There is some cost to doing that. So, you know, as we continue this work, that is an option in the future.
Or we could amend this legislation before they actually went out to bond.
Or we can amend it before they actually go out to bond. But they need to know what they're... Yeah. I'm just trying to get the bonds out of here, man. Okay. All right. So we are at the end of the regular docket. Do you have anyone signed in for public comment? All right, we have Jared Clark. Thanks for bearing with us, Jared. Yeah. Come on up.
Hello. My name is Jared Clark. I live at 16300 Hilliard. I'm here to express my concern with the presence of flock automatic license plate reader cameras in Lakewood, or ALPRs. Currently, there are at least 20 flock safety Falcon ALPR cameras deployed in Lakewood. I'm proud of the council's recent efforts to protect its residents from the broader political climate with the gender freedom and ICE resolutions. Despite this, Lakewood's good kind of democracy, as Councilman Bullock put it, still has a vulnerability: flock cameras. Flock's business model allows law enforcement to share their data with other participating agencies. Police set a list of other departments they consent to share with, and those departments can freely browse their data on demand. Despite not having a flock contract of their own, ICE has exploited this network by using sympathetic police departments to access the ALPR data of larger metro area law enforcement without a warrant. One such case led Denver, Colorado to terminate their contract with Flock when police in neighboring Loveland allowed federal agents to search ALPR data, including Denver's, on their behalf. In another case, Flock themselves simply handed over data belonging to the state of Illinois as part of a quiet pilot program with the CBP, a violation of state law. Flock's ALPR cameras also have been proven to use faulty security standards. Last November, cybersecurity expert John Gaines published a research paper identifying 26 security vulnerabilities in the very same Flock ALPR cameras Lakewood uses. One flaw in particular allows the camera to be connected to and controlled wirelessly without authentication simply by pressing the button on the back in a specific sequence. Flock has not seriously addressed these problems. Flock is not alone. Competitors such as Motorola and Axon employ similar business models that raise all the same concerns of access and security. ALPRs allow ICE to weaponize our own infrastructure against us. The good kind of democracy we all hope for here in Lakewood relies on accountability and transparency, and ALPR cameras offer neither. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we also saw that Ring camera commercial at the Super Bowl. It's a little disconcerting, as well as the tech. So I'm confident that our police department is not ICE friendly, but we will. But I think this is certainly a good question to be looking into and making sure that we have our tight policies around these things. All right. Anyone? That's the only person I have signed in to speak. Did anyone else want to speak? Members of the public? All right. Announcements from council members. Vice President Baker.
6 days ago, the Lakewood boys basketball team beat Menor. So for Director Gordon's edification, and then also, and they won a conference title. So proud of them. I think they've won 9 straight, and they play on Tuesday in the playoffs against Amherst at Lakewood. So 7 p.m. They're a really fun team. I encourage folks in the community to come out and watch them. So thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Hamilton Steiner.
Thank you. I am going to pitch the Fire and Ice Community Fundraiser. Yes. Saturday, March 14th from 4 to 7 p.m. This year it's at the Hamilton Ice Arena due to our the renovations at Winterhurst. But this is a 4th annual event, and it has been started by Lakewood's own firefighter, Mr. Andrag, and his wife, Nicole Andrag, who is also a teacher in Lakewood City Schools. So I would love everyone to come out and support, and the funds raised go to support the Bridges, Champs, and Miles programs at Lakewood City Schools. So come on out again at Saturday, March 14th, 4 to 7 p.m., Hamilton Ice Arena in Rocky River.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to going and wearing my Lakewood Fire sweatshirt. So this will be all right.
Chief, are you going to be
Madam President?
Yes.
People on the boards?
We need to get you a Lakewood Police sweatshirt.
I would be delighted with the Lakewood Police sweatshirt as well.
Oh, someone's a little
if you got a
jealous
Public
over there?
Works one, I would just, I can throw it up. All right. I'll wear them all very proudly. All right. Councilwoman Stubig.
Thank you. Just a calendar update. We all know, again, that it's Women's History Month this month. And yesterday was Zero Discrimination Day, for those of you that forgot about that one. Tomorrow is the full worm moon. I'm not quite sure why it's the worm moon, but I'm sure someone will reach out and let me know that.
It's a red eclipse in the morning.
Oh,
yes.
Very good, thank you. And the 8th, International Women's Day. All right, girls, we get our turn. International Women's Day on the 8th. Thank you.
All right, other announcements from council members? Announcements from the administration? All right, with no further business become before council, without objection, we're adjourned.